My name is Chloe, and a year ago, I married the love of my life, Jack. Our relationship was everything I'd ever dreamed of, loving, supportive, and full of laughter. I couldn't have been happier with my family life. I worked as an accountant, mostly from home. It was a job I enjoyed, though there was more to my professional life than met the eye. Jack ran his own car parts business, which kept him busy but allowed us plenty of time together. We loved spending our free time with each other, often attending parties with Jack's large circle of friends, colleagues, and business partners. I always looked forward to these gatherings, relishing the chance to socialize and be part of Jack's world. One sunny Saturday morning, as I sat at our kitchen table sipping coffee and checking emails, Jack came in, grinning from ear to ear. "Hey, beautiful," he said, planting a kiss on my cheek. "Mike's throwing a barbecue at his place. Thought we could head over, have a few drinks, catch up with everyone. You up for it?" "Sounds perfect," I replied, already looking forward to the evening. We arrived at Mike's house around 7 p.m., the smell of grilled meat and the sound of laughter filling the air. As we made our way through the crowd, I noticed a striking blonde woman I'd never seen before. She was talking animatedly with a group of people, her laughter carrying across the yard. "Who's that?" I asked Jack, nodding in her direction. His face tightened almost imperceptibly. "That's Vanessa. My ex-girlfriend." Before I could respond, Mike spotted us and waved us over. "Jack, Chloe. Glad you could make it. Come on, let me introduce you to everyone." As we approached the group, Vanessa's eyes locked onto us. Her smile widened, but it didn't reach her eyes. Well, she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "If it isn't Jack and his wife." The way she said wife made it sound like a dirty word. I forced a smile, determined not to let her get to me. "Nice to meet you, Vanessa," I said, extending my hand. "I'm Chloe." She looked at my hand as if it were covered in dirt, then turned back to Jack. "Jackie, darling, it's been too long. You must tell me all about what you've been up to." I bristled at her use of the pet name, but Jack smoothly intervened. "It's good to see you, Vanessa. Chloe and I have been great. How about you? Still working at your dad's company?" Vanessa's smile faltered for a moment. "Oh, you know me. I like to keep my options open. Unlike some people, I'm not tied down." The conversation continued in this vein for what felt like hours, with Vanessa making thinly veiled jabs at me while fawning over Jack. I did my best to stay calm and collected, but by the end of the night, I was exhausted. In the weeks following that first encounter with Vanessa, I noticed her appearing more frequently at our social gatherings. Each time, she seemed to go out of her way to make me feel uncomfortable and out of place. One Friday evening, we were at a dinner party hosted by one of Jack's business associates. I was chatting with a few of the wives when Vanessa sauntered over, champagne flute in hand. "Oh, Chloe," she said, her voice sickeningly sweet. "That's an interesting outfit." I didn't realize the librarian look was back in style. I glanced down at my knee-length skirt and blouse, feeling suddenly self-conscious. "I think it's appropriate for a dinner party," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Vanessa laughed, a sound like tinkling glass. "Of course you do, sweetie. Not everyone can pull off haute couture like moi." I bit my tongue, resisting the urge to point out that her dress looked more suitable for a nightclub than a dinner party. Instead, I excused myself and went to find Jack. As the weeks went by, Vanessa's behavior became increasingly bold. She started posting photos from our gatherings on social media, always making sure to crop me out or block my face. The captions were thinly veiled insults about my appearance or personality. One day, while scrolling through my feed, I came across a particularly nasty post. Vanessa had uploaded a photo of herself next to an unflattering picture of me. The caption read, "Who do you think is a better match for Jack? Vote in the comments." I felt my cheeks burn with anger and humiliation as I read through the comments, most of which were in Vanessa's favor. At the end of the post, she had added, "Looks like the people have spoken." Jack must be a complete fool to have chosen plain Jane over a beauty like me. That evening, when Jack got home from work, I decided to confront him about the situation. "Jack, we need to talk about Vanessa," I said as he walked through the door. He sighed, loosening his tie. "What's she done now?" I showed him the post on my phone. His face darkened as he scrolled through it. "This is unacceptable," he muttered. "I'll talk to her, tell her to take it down." "That's not enough," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I want you to tell her to stay away from us. I don't want her at our parties anymore." Jack ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. "Chloe, I can't do that. She's the daughter of an important business partner. I can't just ban her from social events." "So what, I'm just supposed to put up with her bullying me?" I asked, my voice rising. "Of course not," Jack said, pulling me into a hug. "Look, I'll talk to her, make it clear that this behavior isn't okay. But you have to understand, I can't completely cut her out without risking my business relationships." I pulled away from him, frustration building inside me. "And what about our relationship, Jack? Doesn't that matter?" "Of course it does," he said, looking hurt. "You know you're the only one I love. Vanessa is in the past. I chose you, remember?" His words should have comforted me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of our problems. As I went to bed that night, I couldn't help but wonder, was our perfect life starting to crack at the seams? As the weeks passed, Vanessa's behavior became increasingly brazen. At every party or gathering, she seemed to make it her mission to get under my skin and closer to Jack. One particularly memorable evening, we were at a cocktail party hosted by one of Jack's colleagues. I had chosen a simple but elegant black dress for the occasion, feeling confident and comfortable. That feeling didn't last long. Vanessa sauntered into the room wearing a skin-tight red dress that left little to the imagination. Her eyes locked onto Jack immediately, and she made a beeline for us. "Jack, darling," she cooed, completely ignoring my presence. "You look absolutely dashing tonight." Before either of us could respond, she placed her hand on Jack's arm, stroking it lightly. "Care to dance with me? For old time's sake?" I felt my blood begin to boil, but Jack smoothly extricated himself from her grasp. "Thanks, Vanessa, but I'm here with my wife. Maybe another time." As we walked away, I couldn't help but feel a small thrill of victory. But it was short-lived. Throughout the night, I watched as Vanessa made repeated attempts to get Jack alone. She'd call him over to discuss business, or ask him to help her with some contrived problem. To his credit, Jack rebuffed her advances each time, always making sure to include me in the conversation or quickly returning to my side. But the constant attention was wearing on both of us. The next few weeks did not bring the desired relief. Vanessa's attempts to undermine our relationship became more frequent and more public. She'd post provocative comments on Jack's social media, always with a reminder of their shared history. At parties, she'd loudly reminisce about their time together, pointedly excluding me from the conversation. But it was at our friend Tom's birthday party that things really came to a head. Vanessa arrived fashionably late, wearing a dress that looked more appropriate for a red carpet than a backyard barbecue. As she made her entrance, she locked eyes with me and smirked. "Oh, Chloe," she called out, her voice dripping with false concern. "You poor thing. Didn't you get the memo? This isn't a library book club meeting." Laughter rippled through the crowd, and I felt my cheeks burn with embarrassment. Jack, who had been chatting with some colleagues, quickly made his way to my side. "That's enough, Vanessa," he said, his voice low and angry. "You need to stop this childish behavior." Vanessa's eyes widened in mock innocence. "Why, Jack, I'm just trying to help. Someone needs to show your little wife how to dress for these events." Before Jack could respond, I felt something cold and wet seep through my clothes. I looked down in shock to see red wine spreading across the front of my dress. Vanessa stood before me, empty glass in hand, her face a picture of feigned remorse. "Oh no," she gasped. "How clumsy of me. Although, to be honest, that stain is an improvement on that dreadful outfit. The party fell silent, all eyes on us. I stood there, wine dripping from my clothes, feeling humiliated and angry. But as I looked at Vanessa's smug face, something inside me snapped. "You know what, Vanessa?" I said, my voice steady and clear. "I'd rather wear this stained dress than spend another minute pretending to be civil with you. Your behavior is pathetic and embarrassing. If you'll excuse me, my husband and I are leaving." I turned to Jack, who was staring at Vanessa with a mixture of shock and disgust. "Let's go home," I said. As we walked towards the exit, I heard Vanessa's shrill voice behind us. "Jack, darling, don't go. Stay, and I'll take good care of you." Jack didn't even turn around. He put his arm around me and said loudly enough for everyone to hear, "The only person I want taking care of me is my wife. Goodbye, Vanessa." As we drove home in silence, I couldn't help but feel that a line had been crossed. Vanessa had shown her true colors, and there was no going back. One sunny morning, Jack came into our bedroom with a serious expression on his face. "Chloe, I have to go on a business trip," he explained. "It's important for the company. I'll be gone for about a week." I nodded, trying to ignore the slight twinge of unease in my stomach. "Okay. When do you leave?" "Tomorrow morning," he replied. "I'm sorry for the short notice. It came up suddenly." I forced a smile. "It's fine. I understand. Your business is important." The next day, Jack left for his trip, and I found myself alone in our house. The week passed slowly, with me buried in work to distract myself from the emptiness of the house. On Friday evening, my phone rang. To my surprise, it was Vanessa. "Chloe, darling," her sickeningly sweet voice came through the speaker. "I'm organizing a little get-together tonight. Just a small group of 8. I'd love for you and Jack to come." I hesitated. Jack's out of town on business actually." "Oh, what a shame," Vanessa said, not sounding disappointed at all. "But you should still come. It'll be a great chance for us to bury the hatchet, start fresh. What do you say?" Every instinct told me to refuse, but a part of me was curious. "I'm not sure," I said hesitantly. "Oh, come on," Vanessa pressed. "It's at Le Chateau. You know the place, right? Very exclusive. It'll be fun, I promise." At the mention of Le Chateau, I felt a smile tug at my lips. "All right," I said, making a split-second decision. "I'll be there. What time?" "Wonderful," Vanessa exclaimed. 8 o'clock. Don't be late." At precisely 8 o'clock, I walked into Le Chateau. I saw a cheerful group of Jack's friends, 8 people including Vanessa, sitting at a table. For a moment, I thought everything might go well. But as I approached, my heart sank. There was no place set for me at the table. Vanessa stood up, her eyes gleaming with malice. "Oh, Chloe," she said loudly, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. You see, we're full up here. No room for extras." She twirled, showing off her designer dress. "This is a place for people who belong, Chloe. Beautiful people. Successful people. Maybe you should try the diner down the street. I hear they do a mean hot dog." The table fell silent, everyone looking uncomfortable, but no one speaking up. I laughed, genuinely amused by Vanessa's pathetic attempt at humiliation. Then I turned and called out, "Excuse me, could I speak to the restaurant manager, please?" The restaurant manager approached our table, his demeanor professional and courteous. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, looking between Vanessa and me. Before Vanessa could speak, I smiled at the manager. "No problem at all. I was just wondering if I could join this lovely group for dinner." The manager smiled kindly at me. "Of course, madam. Let me get you a comfortable chair right away." As he hurried off, Vanessa's face contorted with rage. "Excuse me? I booked this table for 8 people. She wasn't invited, and there's no room for her here." The manager returned with a plush chair, placing it at the table. I apologize for the confusion, but Madame has the right to sit at any table she wishes. She is, after all, the owner of Le Chateau. A collective gasp went around the table. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, while Jack's friends looked at me in disbelief. One of them, Tom, spoke up. But, Chloe, I thought you were an accountant? That's how Jack introduced you to us. I smiled, shrugging my shoulders modestly. I am an accountant. I do the books for my restaurant. I've never been one to show off my wealth. I prefer to judge people by their character, not their bank account. Vanessa's face turned a deep shade of red, a mix of embarrassment and anger. The atmosphere at the table shifted dramatically. Jack's friends, who had been silent during Vanessa's tirade, now fell over themselves to invite me to join them. Chloe, please, sit with us. We'd love to hear more about your restaurant. I can't believe we never knew this about you. I held up a hand, smiling gently. Thank you all for the invitation, but I think I'll decline. I just wanted to stop by and say hello. I turned to the manager. Please make sure my husband's friends are well taken care of. The bill is on me tonight. As I prepared to leave, I couldn't help but add. And Vanessa? There's a lovely diner down the street. I hear they do a mean hot dog. You might want to try it sometime. With that, I left the restaurant, leaving behind a stunned silence and a thoroughly humiliated Vanessa. When Jack returned from his business trip a few days later, I told him about the incident over dinner. You should have seen her face, Jack, I said, laughing. I don't think I've ever seen anyone turn that shade of red before. Jack shook his head, chuckling. I can't believe she thought she could embarrass you like that. You handled it perfectly, Chloe. As we finished our meal, I felt a sense of contentment wash over me. Vanessa's attempt to humiliate me had backfired spectacularly, and in the process, it had brought Jack and me closer together. Several weeks flew by after the incident at Le Chateau. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm, and the memory of Vanessa's humiliation had faded into an amusing anecdote Jack and I occasionally shared over dinner. One crisp autumn morning, as I was going through my emails, I noticed an intriguing message. It was an invitation to participate in the prestigious Entrepreneur of the Year award program, specifically in the Successful Entrepreneurial Debut category. My heart skipped a beat as I read the details. This was a significant recognition of my hard work and success with the restaurant. We decided to attend the event together. On the night of the awards, we dressed in our finest. Jack looked dashing in his tuxedo, and I chose an elegant, understated gown that made me feel confident and powerful. The venue was spectacular, filled with the city's most successful and influential people. As we mingled, I saw many familiar faces, friends, acquaintances, and several of Jack's business associates. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation and excitement. At one point, Jack excused himself to chat with some colleagues, leaving me by the champagne fountain. I was admiring the intricate ice sculpture when a familiar voice hissed in my ear. What are you doing here? I turned to find Vanessa glaring at me, her face twisted with anger and disbelief. I was invited, I replied calmly, showing her my invitation. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. This event is for the rich and successful people of this city. People like me and my father. You don't belong here, you upstart. How dare you try to infiltrate our world? Get out before you embarrass yourself. I remained calm, scanning the room until I spotted who I was looking for. With a smile, I waved to two distinguished-looking older gentlemen in impeccable suits who were engaged in conversation across the room. As they approached, Vanessa's tirade continued, but I ignored her, focusing on the men. When they reached us, I wrapped one of them in a warm embrace. Dad, I'm so glad you could make it, I said, kissing his cheek. Turning to the other man, I extended my hand, which he shook warmly. Mr. Thompson, it's wonderful to see you again. Vanessa's jaw dropped as she realized who the second man was. She turned to him, her voice shrill with disbelief. Daddy? What are you doing? How can you possibly be friendly with this nobody? She's just an accountant who got lucky and is now pretending to be one of us. She doesn't belong in our world." Mr. Thompson's face flushed a deep red as he listened to his daughter's outburst. His eyes, usually calm and calculating, now blazed with fury. "Silence," he thundered, causing Vanessa to flinch. He gestured towards my father. "This man is William Carter, one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the country and my valued business partner. Your ignorant words could jeopardize a multi-million-dollar deal." Vanessa's eyes widened in shock, but instead of backing down, she doubled down on her tirade. "Then cancel the deal, Daddy. We don't need to do business with her family. They're beneath us." Mr. Thompson's face mottled with rage, red spots appearing on his cheeks and forehead. His voice rose to a shout, causing heads to turn throughout the ballroom. "That's enough. Your behavior is inexcusable." He jabbed a finger at Vanessa. "From this moment, you're cut off. No more allowance, no more credit cards. And that luxury apartment you're so fond of? Consider yourself evicted." Vanessa's mouth gaped open in disbelief as her father turned to us, his tone suddenly apologetic. "Mr. Carter, Chloe, please accept my deepest apologies for this disgraceful scene." "Vanessa," he snapped, turning back to his daughter. "Leave immediately. You've proven yourself unworthy of being here." At that moment, Jack pushed through the crowd that had gathered around us, his face a mix of concern and anger. "What's going on here?" he demanded. Before anyone could respond, he caught sight of Vanessa and shook his head in disgust. "I should have known. Now I remember exactly why I broke up with you, Vanessa. You never learned how to behave in polite society." Vanessa's composure finally cracked. Tears began to stream down her face, leaving trails of mascara in their wake. "Daddy, please," she sobbed, reaching for Mr. Thompson's arm. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. Please don't do this." But Mr. Thompson shrugged off her grasp. "I had business to discuss with my partners," he said coldly, turning his back on her. "Goodbye, Vanessa." As Mr. Thompson walked away with my father, Vanessa stood alone in the middle of the ballroom, her shoulders shaking with sobs, mascara streaking her cheeks. The crowd around us slowly dispersed, leaving her isolated in her humiliation. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. When it came time for the awards ceremony, I found myself walking onto the stage in a daze as my name was called for the Successful Entrepreneurial Debut category. As I accepted the award, I caught sight of my father and Jack in the audience. They were on their feet, applauding wildly, their faces beaming with pride. Their enthusiasm was infectious, and I felt a surge of joy and accomplishment wash over me. In the weeks following the awards ceremony, life settled into a new, pleasant rhythm. The golden statuette found its place on our mantelpiece, a quiet reminder of that eventful night. Jack and I continued to attend parties with his friends and business associates. Without Vanessa's toxic presence, these gatherings became noticeably more enjoyable. The atmosphere was lighter, the conversations more genuine, and the laughter more frequent. One evening, as we were getting ready for another social event, Jack came up behind me as I was putting on my earrings. "You know," he said, wrapping his arms around my waist, "I've noticed how much more fun these parties have become lately." I smiled at him in the mirror. I was just thinking the same thing. It's amazing how one person's absence can change the entire dynamic. Jack nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Speaking of absence, have you heard anything about Vanessa lately?" I shook my head. "Not really. She seems to have vanished completely. Although, well, I overheard Tom talking to his wife at the last party. Apparently, there's a rumor going around that Mr. Thompson sent Vanessa to another state. Something about not wanting her to embarrass him or the family business anymore." Jack raised an eyebrow. "Wow, that's pretty drastic. But I can't say I'm surprised after her behavior at the awards ceremony." I turned to face him, adjusting his tie. "It's a shame, really. All that privilege, and she never learned to appreciate it or use it wisely." As we drove to the party, I reflected on how much my life had changed in the past year. From the challenges with Vanessa to the unexpected recognition of my business acumen, it had been a whirlwind of experiences. Yet through it all, my relationship with Jack had only grown stronger. And as for Vanessa? Well, I genuinely hoped she'd find her way eventually. After all, everyone deserves a chance to grow and become a better version of themselves. Who knows? Maybe her fresh start in a new state would be just what she needed. For now, though, I was content to enjoy this moment, swaying in my husband's arms, surrounded by friends, grateful for the life we'd built together. My name's Sarah, and I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. Dad worked 2 jobs, and Mom cleaned houses to make ends meet. I remember watching them count pennies at the kitchen table, trying to figure out how to pay the bills. I tried to help out where I could. I'd babysit the neighbors' kids or mow lawns in the summer. Every little bit counted. School was my escape. I buried myself in books and threw myself into every subject. My teachers noticed. "Sarah, you've got a real gift," Mrs. Johnson, my favorite English teacher, told me one day. "Keep this up, and you could get a scholarship to college." That became my goal. I'd stay up late studying, determined to make something of myself and help my parents. Our next-door neighbors were a different story. The Millers were what you'd call a dysfunctional family. Mrs. Miller was always yelling, her shrill voice carrying through the thin walls of our duplex. Mr. Miller was quieter, but he didn't work and spent most of his time drinking on the front porch. Their son, Jack, was in my class. He was a quiet kid, always hunched over like he was trying to disappear. No one really talked to him at school. One day, I saw him sitting alone at lunch, and something made me walk over. We started talking, and I realized Jack was actually pretty smart. He had a dry sense of humor that made me laugh, and he was great at math. "You want help with your algebra?" he offered one day when he saw me struggling. From then on, we became steady buddies. Jack was different from his parents, kind, thoughtful, and eager to learn. We'd spend hours talking about our dreams for the future. "I want to work with computers," he told me one day. "Create things that can change the world." "I want to fly," I admitted. "See the world from above." He grinned. "You'd make a great flight attendant." As we got older, our friendship deepened. Jack became my confidant, the person I turned to when things got tough at home. One day Mrs. Miller was gone. She'd run off with some rich guy she met online, leaving Jack and his dad behind. Jack tried to act like it didn't bother him, but I could see the hurt in his eyes. "Maybe it's for the best," he said, his voice hollow. I hugged him tight, wishing I could take away his pain. As senior year approached, college applications loomed. I threw myself into every extracurricular activity I could, determined to get that scholarship. The day the acceptance letters arrived, I tore mine open with shaking hands. Full ride to State University. I ran next door to tell Jack, but his dad answered. "Jack's not here," he slurred. "Left for some tech school out west." Didn't even say goodbye. That fall, I left for college with a mixture of excitement and sadness. Jack and I had drifted apart, and now he was gone without a word. College life was a whirlwind. I threw myself into my accounting studies, determined to make the most of my scholarship. But even as I crunched numbers and balanced books, a part of me yearned for something else. One day, I found myself staring out the window of my dorm room, watching a plane streak across the sky. That old dream came rushing back, to be up there, among the clouds. 4 years flew by, and before I knew it, I was back in my hometown, fresh degree in hand. My parents were so proud. "Our little girl, the accountant," Dad beamed, hugging me tight. I forced a smile, not ready to burst their bubble just yet. That night, I took a walk down my old street. I paused in front of the Miller's house, memories flooding back. The place looked abandoned, weeds overtaking the yard. "If you're looking for the Millers, they're long gone," Mrs. Thompson, the neighborhood gossip, called from her porch. I walked over. What happened? Old man Miller passed about a year after you left for college. Drink finally got him, she clucked her tongue. That son of theirs never showed up for the funeral. No one's heard from him since. I pushed thoughts of Jack aside and focused on my secret plan. I'd found a flight attendant training program nearby. It wasn't easy juggling my new accounting job and the classes, but every time I felt like giving up, I'd remember that feeling of watching planes soar overhead. 6 months later, I stood in front of my parents, hands shaking as I held out my flight attendant license. I'd been taking classes, I stammered. To become a flight attendant. It's what I've always wanted to do. There was a long silence. Then Dad spoke up. Is this really what you want, sweetheart? I nodded, tears in my eyes. To my surprise, they both hugged me. Then we're proud of you, Mom said. Just promise you'll visit often. 2 weeks later, I was on my first flight as a trainee. As the plane lifted off, I felt a thrill run through me. This was where I belonged. The next 2 years were a blur of cities, countries, and faces. Then came the flight that changed everything. It was a routine trip from New York to Las Vegas. I was doing my usual pre-flight checks when I heard a familiar voice. Excuse me, where's the nearest exit? I turned, and my heart stopped. There, standing in front of me, was Jack. He looked different, sharper, more polished. But those kind eyes were the same. He recognized me at the same moment. Sarah, is that you? Jack, I breathed. Well, it's been so long. We stared at each other, years of unspoken words hanging between us. Then the captain's voice crackled over the intercom, snapping us back to reality. I have to finish my checks, I said quickly. But maybe we can talk later? He nodded, a slow smile spreading across his face. I'd like that. As soon as the seatbelt sign turned off, I made my way down the aisle, my heart pounding. Jack was in seat 14C, his eyes lighting up as I approached. We chatted as much as we could during the flight, catching up in bits and pieces between my duties. Jack told me he was working in IT now, something to do with casino software. He seemed different, more confident, successful. As we began our descent into Las Vegas, Jack scribbled his number on a napkin. Let's catch up properly. Dinner tomorrow? I hesitated for a second, then took the napkin. I'd like that. The next evening, I found myself sitting across from Jack in a cozy restaurant off the strip. The years melted away as we talked, laughed, and remembered. As the night went on, I felt that old connection reigniting. Jack was still the same kind, intelligent guy I'd known, but there was a new edge to him, a drive that was almost magnetic. We started seeing each other regularly. Jack's work kept him in Vegas, and I managed to swap shifts to spend more time there. It felt like we were making up for lost time. As the weeks turned into months, I watched in awe as Jack's success grew. He was in demand, his company expanding rapidly. And through it all, our relationship deepened. One evening, after a particularly successful deal, Jack took me to the top of the stratosphere. As we looked out over the glittering city, he turned to me, his eyes shining. Sarah, he said, getting down on one knee. You've been my best friend, my support, my everything. Will you marry me? Tears sprang to my eyes. Yes, I whispered. Yes, I will. Our wedding was everything I'd ever dreamed of, elegant, joyous, and filled with love. As we danced under the stars, I felt like the luckiest woman in the world. Little did I know, our perfect world was about to be shattered. The day that would change everything started like any other. I was home, enjoying a rare day off, when there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and my blood ran cold. There, standing in the hallway, was a face I'd hoped never to see again. Well, drawled a familiar voice. Aren't you going to invite your mother-in-law in? Jack's mother sauntered into our apartment, her eyes darting around greedily. I stood frozen, watching as she ran her fingers over our furniture, examining everything. "Nice place you've got here," she said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Is it owned or rented?" Before I could respond, Jack walked in from the bedroom. He stopped short, his face a mixture of shock and something else. Was it fear? "Mom," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" She turned, a wide smile plastering her face. "Jackie, my boy. Can't a mother visit her successful son?" Jack seemed to shake himself out of his stupor. "Of course, it's been 15 years. "Oh, details," she waved her hand dismissively. "Now, tell me about this lovely home. How much did it set you back?" I watched, bewildered, as Jack answered her. $2,500,000. Her eyes widened, a look of pure joy spreading across her face. My, and what other properties do you own, son?" The next few hours were excruciating. Jack's mother peppered him with questions about his finances, his business, his assets. Jack answered everything, seemingly unable to refuse her. Finally, as evening approached, I thought she'd leave. Instead, she dropped a bombshell. "Well, I'm exhausted," she announced. "Jackie, be a dear and show me to the guest room. I'll be staying here for a while." I looked to Jack, expecting him to say something, to refuse. But he just nodded, avoiding my eyes. "Of course, Mom. I'll get your bags." That night, as we lay in bed, I turned to Jack. "Are you really okay with this? After everything she did? How she treated you?" "People change," he said, but he didn't sound convinced. "Let's just give it a chance, okay?" The next few weeks were hell. Jack's mother, Veronica, she insisted I call her, was a nightmare. She criticized everything I did, from my cooking to my job. "A flight attendant," she scoffed one day. "Couldn't you find a real career?" I bit my tongue, reminding myself to be civil for Jack's sake. But it was hard. Veronica acted like an angel around Jack, all smiles and motherly concern. But the moment he left for work, the mask would drop. One day, as I was preparing to leave for a flight, she cornered me in the kitchen. "Listen here, girl," she hissed, all pretense gone. "I know what you're after. My son's money. I've seen gold diggers like you before. But let me tell you something, that money is mine. I raised that boy, and I deserve it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You abandoned him," I spat. "You have no right." "I have every right," she cut me off. "And unless you want me to make your life very difficult, you'll do exactly as I say." "What are you talking about?" Her eyes gleamed with malice. "You're going to pay me $10,000 a month." I felt sick. "You're insane. I'm not paying you anything." She shrugged. "Your choice. But don't say I didn't warn you." As I left for my flight that day, my mind was reeling. I knew I had to tell Jack, but would he believe me? And what would Veronica do if I exposed her? The next few weeks were a blur of tension and unease. I tried to talk to Jack about his mother's behavior, but he always brushed it off. I started taking longer flights, volunteering for routes that would keep me away from home for days at a time. It was cowardly, I knew, but I couldn't stand the atmosphere in our once happy home. One day, after a particularly long flight to Tokyo, I returned home to find Jack waiting for me, his face ashen. "We need to talk," he said, his voice cold. He handed me a manila envelope. Inside were photos of me, in my flight attendant uniform, kissing a man I'd never seen before. "What is this?" I gasped, my hands shaking. "You tell me," Jack said, his voice trembling with anger. "My mother found these. She's been trying to tell me for weeks that you were unfaithful, but I didn't believe her. Until now." I felt like I was drowning. "Jack, these are fake. Your mother is setting me up. She threatened me, said she'd make me pay if I didn't give her money." Jack's face hardened. "And now you're trying to blame my mother? She was right about you all along." He pulled out a stack of papers from his briefcase and slammed them on the table. Divorce papers, he said flatly. I want you out of this house by the end of the week. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. This couldn't be happening. Jack, wait. There's something else you need to know. I'm pregnant. For a moment, I saw a flicker of emotion cross his face. Then it was gone, replaced by a mask of anger and betrayal. Convenient timing, he spat. But how do I know it's even mine? For all I know, it could be your pilot friend's. With that, he stormed out, leaving me alone with my shattered world. I sank to the floor, sobs racking my body. How had everything gone so wrong? And what was I going to do now? As if summoned by my despair, Veronica appeared in the doorway, a triumphant smirk on her face. Well, she drawled. Looks like the little gold digger's plan backfired. I looked up at her, anger replacing my sorrow. You did this. You set me up. She shrugged, not even bothering to deny it. I told you I'd make your life difficult if you didn't play ball. You should have listened. With that, she sauntered out, leaving me alone with my thoughts. As I packed my bags that night, my hand rested on my still flat stomach. I had more than just myself to think about now. I had to fight for my child. I stood on my parents' porch, my hand shaking as I rang the doorbell. When Mom opened the door, her eyes widened in shock. Sarah? What's wrong, honey? I burst into tears, collapsing into her arms. Between sobs, I managed to explain what had happened. Mom and Dad listened in stunned silence. You'll stay here, Dad said firmly when I'd finished. We'll figure this out together. The next few months were a blur. Unable to fly due to my pregnancy, I took a job working remotely as an accountant for Mom's friend, Linda. The work was mind-numbing, but it kept me afloat financially and gave me something to focus on besides my shattered life. 7 months after leaving Las Vegas, I gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. I named him Michael, after my grandfather. As I held him in my arms, I felt a fierce love and protectiveness I'd never experienced before. I'll make this right, I whispered to him. I promise. But even as I settled into motherhood, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The photos, Veronica's sudden reappearance, the way Jack had refused to listen to me, it all felt too calculated. One sleepless night, as I rocked Michael, I made a decision. I was going to fight back. The next day, I hired a private detective, a no-nonsense woman named Rita. I need you to follow my former mother-in-law, I told her. Something's not right, and I need proof. For weeks, I waited anxiously for news. Finally, Rita called. You're gonna want to hear this, she said grimly. I listened in horror as Rita played back recordings of Veronica's conversations with a man she called her sugar daddy. The truth was even worse than I'd imagined. Veronica was on the verge of bankruptcy, drowning in loans she couldn't repay. Her plan was to use Jack to clear her debts, then get rid of him and take everything. I've got it all worked out, Veronica's voice crackled through the speaker. Once Jackie signs over everything to me, we'll stage a little accident. His new wife will take the fall, and we'll be set for life, baby. My blood ran cold. Jack was in danger, and he had no idea. There's more, Rita said. She's got a new bride picked out for your ex. Some girl who's in on the scheme, but doesn't know about the accident part. I felt sick. The total value of Jack's assets was estimated at $15 million. Veronica was willing to destroy multiple lives for that money. With shaking hands, I dialed Jack's number. It went straight to voicemail. Jack, it's Sarah. Please, you have to listen to me. You're in danger. Your mother. The line beeped, cutting me off. I tried again and again, but he never picked up. Panic rising in my throat, I turned to Rita. What do I do now? She looked at me gravely. You've got 2 choices. You can turn this evidence over to the police, or what? Or you can take matters into your own hands. Sometimes, to save someone, you've got to do it yourself. I looked down at Michael, peacefully sleeping in his crib. Then I thought of Jack, the boy who'd been my best friend, the man I'd loved, now unknowingly walking into a deadly trap. My jaw set with determination. I'm going back to Las Vegas. As I stepped off the plane in Las Vegas, the familiar heat hit me like a wall. But I didn't have time to acclimate. I had a mission. My first stop was to meet Jack's fiancée. I'd managed to get her address from Rita, and now I stood outside her apartment, heart pounding. Taking a deep breath, I knocked. The woman who opened the door was beautiful, but looked tired and stressed. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "You're Sarah, aren't you?" she said softly. I nodded. "We need to talk. It's about Veronica." She hesitated, then stepped aside to let me in. Once inside, I turned to face her. "I know everything," I said bluntly. "About the deal with Veronica, about the plan." The woman, Amanda, she'd introduced herself as, paled. "I can explain. My mother, she's sick. I needed the money for her treatment. Veronica said it wasn't illegal, that we were just helping Jack manage his assets." Pulling out my phone, I played the recording Rita had given me. As Amanda listened to Veronica's cold voice, detailing her plan to frame her and kill Jack, all color drained from her face. When it was over, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. "I had no idea," she whispered. "I swear, I didn't know about any of this. What do I do? I can't go to prison, my mother needs me." I took a deep breath. Help me save Jack and stop Veronica. It's the only way to make this right." Together, we headed to Jack's office. My heart raced as we rode the elevator. Would he even listen to me? When we walked in, Jack's face registered shock, then anger. "Sarah, what are you doing here? And Amanda, why are you with her?" "Jack," I said quickly, "please. Give me 15 minutes. That's all I ask. After that, if you want me to leave, I will." I laid out everything, the photos of Veronica with her lover, the recordings of her plans. With each revelation, Jack's face grew paler. Finally, I pulled out the last pieces of evidence, a photo of Michael, and the DNA test results. "This is your son, Jack," I said, my voice breaking. "Those photos of me cheating? They were fake. Veronica set me up to get me out of the way." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Then Jack looked up, his eyes meeting mine. "Sarah, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. I should have trusted you." Relief washed over me, but I knew we weren't out of the woods yet. "We need to stop your mother before she hurts anyone else." With our plan in motion, Jack installed hidden cameras throughout his apartment. The next day, he casually mentioned to Veronica that he had a business trip to Europe coming up. "It's a big deal, Mom," he said, feigning excitement. "Could be gone for weeks." I watched the live feed from a nearby apartment I'd rented. Veronica's eyes gleamed with poorly concealed anticipation. That evening, Veronica called Amanda, demanding she come over immediately. But Amanda, as we'd planned, refused. "I'm out," she said firmly. "This isn't right, and I won't be part of it anymore." Veronica's face contorted with rage, but she quickly composed herself. Turning to Jack, she adopted a concerned expression. "Sweetie," she cooed, "with your trip coming up, don't you think it's time to update your will? Just in case, you know." Jack nodded, playing along. "You're right, Mom. I should probably include you in it." My heart raced as I watched Jack sign the fake will we'd prepared. Veronica's eyes lit up with triumph. "Oh, darling," she gushed. "This calls for a celebration. Let me get us some wine." As Veronica disappeared into the kitchen, I zoomed in on the camera feed. My blood ran cold as I watched her pour clear liquid into one of the glasses. When she returned, she handed the doctored glass to Jack. "To your success, my dear," she said, raising her own glass. Jack pretended to take a sip, then suddenly clutched his stomach. "Mom," he gasped, "I don't feel so good." He stumbled to the couch and collapsed, eyes closed. Veronica waited a moment, then pulled out her phone. "It's done," she hissed into it. "Get over here now." Minutes later, her lover arrived. They spoke in hushed tones, discussing how to move Jack's body. As they approached him, I gave the signal. The door burst open, police flooding in. "LVPD. Hands where we can see them." Jack's eyes snapped open, and he sat up. Veronica's face drained of color. "But, how?" she stammered. As the police cuffed Veronica and her lover, Jack looked directly at the hidden camera and winked. At the police station, I gave my statement alongside Jack and Amanda. Veronica and her accomplice were charged with attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. As we left the station, exhausted but relieved, Jack turned to me. "Sarah," he said softly, "I can't begin to tell you how sorry I am. For everything. Can we try again? I love you, and I want to be there for you and our son." "Jack," I said gently, "I'm glad we were able to work together to stop your mother. And I'm thrilled that you want to be part of our son's life. But I can't go back to how things were. You found another woman so quickly, believed the worst of me so easily. That's not the kind of love I want." Pain flashed across his face, but he nodded. "I understand. I'll always regret not trusting you. But I promise to be the best father I can be to our son." In the months that followed, Jack kept his word. He paid generous alimony and was actively involved in Michael's life. We developed a cordial co-parenting relationship focused on our son's well-being. As for me, I returned to the skies. There was something healing about soaring above the clouds, visiting new cities and countries. Each flight felt like a fresh start, a reminder that no matter how turbulent life gets, there's always blue sky above the storms.
You know, some days feel like they're smeared with gray from start to finish. Today, my 39th birthday, was exactly one of those. Waking up with the dull ache that's my faithful companion, I didn't feel much like celebrating. My name's Eliza, and I've been battling this damned illness since I was a kid. My condition's a tricky beast, keeping me tethered to a slew of doctors and this fancy private clinic I've been visiting since forever. Good thing I've made something of myself despite the odds, a thriving business that's all mine. But let's be honest, money's great, but it's no company on cold evenings. So there I was, back at the clinic for what felt like the millionth time, just to get myself checked and patched up, hoping to keep the beast at bay. And that's where I bumped into Jacob again. He's this nurse, you see, 5 years younger and looks like he stepped out of some glossy magazine, charming enough to make any woman look twice, sick or not. "Happy birthday, Eliza," Jacob greeted me with that grin that somehow knew more than it should. He was leaning casually against the nurse's station, looking like he didn't have a care in the world. "Thanks," I muttered, not really in the mood for chit-chat. I was more focused on getting through the day without any new bad news. Jacob seemed to pick up on my mood. He strolled over, all confidence and warm eyes. "Hey, don't look so glum. It's your birthday, isn't it? We should celebrate," he suggested, his voice smooth as silk. "Celebrate?" With more poking and prodding, I said, half joking but mostly serious. "Thanks, but I'd rather just get this over with." Jacob laughed, the sound easy and genuine. "Come on, Eliza. It's not every day you turn 39. Let me at least snag you a decent coffee from that cafe you like, my treat." Maybe it was the birthday blues or just the tiredness seeping into my bones, but I found myself nodding. "All right, Jacob. Coffee sounds good," I admitted, allowing a small smile to escape. We walked to the clinic's little cafe area, and as Jacob went off to order, I found a quiet corner to settle into. The thing about Jacob was that he always seemed genuinely cheerful, a stark contrast to the sterile whites and blues of the clinic. He'd been hitting on me since the first time I was admitted for an extended stay, always respectful but persistent as hell. Returning with 2 cups, Jacob handed one to me, his eyes never straying. "Eliza, you're one of the toughest people I know. This illness, it's part of you, but it ain't all of you. You've built a life, a business. That's not nothing." His words, blunt and simple, struck a chord. Maybe it was his straightforwardness, or maybe I was just vulnerable, but it felt good to be seen beyond the patient file. I chuckled, shaking my head slightly. You always this optimistic? With you, always. You make it easy to believe in better days. He replied, his voice low and intimate. I don't know why I let my guard down. Maybe it was the birthday magic or Jacob's relentless charm, but as we sat there, talking and laughing over mediocre hospital cafe coffee, I felt lighter than I had in years. Discharged from the clinic and back in the swing of my daily routine, I thought the surprises were over. Then Jacob called. Hey, Eliza, it's Jacob. How about dinner tonight? Just as friends, if you like. I hesitated, still riding the high of our last conversation. Sure, why not? I found myself saying, a little thrill of excitement making my stomach flutter. Jacob picked me up that evening, and he looked every bit the dashing nurse outside his scrubs, jeans, a crisp shirt, and that same disarming smile. As he drove us to a cozy little Italian place he knew, the air between us was charged, filled with the promise of something new. Over dinner, Jacob didn't waste any time. Between bites of spaghetti, he leaned in, his eyes serious. Eliza, I've been thinking, why not give this a shot? You and me. I nearly choked on my pasta. Jacob, you know my situation, my health. It's complicated. I can't have a normal relationship. Jacob reached across the table, his hand covering mine. I don't care about that, he said firmly. I love you for who you are, not for what you can or can't do. Plus, you deserve to be happy. Everyone does. His words were a balm, soothing the fears that always lurked in the back of my mind. How could I not be moved? Okay, let's give it a try, I agreed, feeling a mixture of joy and terror. Dating Jacob was like a breath of fresh air. He made everything fun, even a simple walk in the park felt like an adventure. He had this knack for making me laugh, and for the first time in a long while, I forgot about my illness. I was just Eliza, not Eliza with a chronic condition. 6 months flew by in a blur of happiness, and then, out of the blue, Jacob proposed. We were at home, a simple night in, when he got down on one knee with a small, elegant ring. Marry me, Eliza. Let's make this official. Tears welled up in my eyes as I nodded vigorously. Yes, Jacob. Yes. But practicality kicked in soon after, and I knew we had to sort out some legal stuff first. Jacob, I want a prenup. It's important to me, I told him one evening, my voice steady despite the fluttering in my chest. Jacob didn't blink an eye. Whatever you need to feel secure, I'm on board. Jacob signed the document without another word, his signature swift and sure. Our wedding was modest, held at the city hall with just a handful of friends as witnesses. Afterward, we moved into my plush apartment in the city center. For the first time in my life, I felt truly at ease, truly loved. And in those moments, my illness and its shadows seemed very far away indeed. Life as a newlywed started off better than I could have imagined. Jacob and I were settling into our daily routines, and I felt like I was living in a dream. That was until a few months after the wedding when Jacob dropped a bombshell after a particularly quiet dinner. Eliza, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I've decided to quit my job, Jacob said abruptly, his tone serious as he avoided my gaze. I almost dropped my fork. Quit your job? Why all of a sudden? You love nursing, I responded, trying to keep the surprise out of my voice. Jacob sighed, pushing his plate away. I'm tired, Eliza. Tired of dealing with sickness every day. It's draining, you know. He looked up at me, his eyes searching for understanding. I reached across the table, squeezing his hand. I get it, love. But what will you do? He smiled then, a slow spread across his face. I was thinking I could take care of the house, cook for us, make things nice here. Wouldn't that be something? I paused, considering. It wasn't a typical arrangement, sure, but Jacob's cooking was divine, and he had a knack for making our place look like it belonged in a magazine. If that's what you want, I'm all for it, I finally said, giving his idea my blessing. True to his word, Jacob transformed into the perfect homemaker. Each evening I came home to a spotless apartment and the aroma of something delicious wafting through the air. Dinners were elaborate affairs, and Jacob always made sure to dress up the table like we were dining at a 5-star restaurant. I felt pampered, cherished, like a goddess. Darling, you've outdone yourself again, I exclaimed one night as I took a bite of the exquisite beef bourguignon he had prepared. Jacob, beaming with pride, filled my wine glass. Only the best for my best girl, he replied, winking at me across the table. This bliss, however, gradually started to fade. A year into our marriage, I noticed a shift. Jacob began spending more and more time in his office, his excuses ready whenever I asked. Just sorting some bills or planning something special for us, he would say. I tried to shake the nagging feeling that something was off. The apartment was still immaculate, the dinners still delicious, but the man who used to sit and chat with me for hours was slowly retreating behind a closed door. One evening, unable to shake my sense of unease, I confronted him. Jacob, we need to talk. You've been so distant lately. Is everything okay? He looked up from his computer, surprised. Everything's fine, Eliza. You're imagining things, he reassured me, his voice gentle yet dismissive. But you're always locked away in here. We hardly talk anymore. Don't you miss how things used to be? I pressed, feeling the frustration rise. Jacob stood and came over to where I was sitting, his hands on my shoulders. Eliza, I love you. Nothing's changed. I'm just managing some stuff to keep our lives running smoothly. Trust me, okay? I wanted to believe him, to brush off the doubts and fall into his reassurance. Okay, I trust you, I murmured, though the pit in my stomach told me not to dismiss my feelings so quickly. It was supposed to be a surprise. I planned to leave work early, cook dinner for Jacob, and maybe rekindle some of that old spark. I was practically buzzing as I turned my key in the lock, ready for a quiet evening with my husband. What I wasn't ready for was the scene that greeted me. In the kitchen, a middle-aged woman, whom I had never seen before, was bustling around, chopping vegetables and stirring pots. My heart sank. Excuse me, who are you? I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. The woman turned, a look of confusion crossing her face. Oh, you must be Mrs. Eliza. I'm Helen. I've been cooking and cleaning here for over a year now, she said, as if that explained everything. A year? My voice cracked. And who hired you? Your husband, madam. He said it would ease your burdens. Helen replied, returning her focus to the bubbling pot on the stove. I felt like the floor was slipping away under me. Thank you, Helen. That will be all for today. I'll handle it from here, I managed to say, keeping my tone even. Once Helen left, the silence of the apartment pounded in my ears. I sat down, trying to process everything. Where was Jacob if not here taking care of things as he claimed? The next day, I contacted a private detective. It was something out of a TV show, but desperate times called for desperate measures. I needed to know what Jacob was doing. The detective's report came back faster than I expected. Jacob had been gambling, not just casual poker nights with friends, but high-stakes games at a casino downtown. He was in debt, big time. When I confronted him that evening, he didn't even try to deny it. His face crumpled when he saw the detective's photos and reports scattered across the coffee table. Eliza, I can explain, Jacob stammered, his eyes not meeting mine. Explain, Jacob, you waste our money. My voice rose, a mix of anger and heartbreak. Jacob's shoulders slumped. I know it's bad. I started going to the casino just to blow off some steam. But it got out of hand. I'm so sorry, Eliza. Sorry doesn't fix this, Jacob. I was trying to stay calm, but the betrayal stung deep. You have debts because of your gambling. How much are we talking about? He hesitated, then mumbled, 70,000. There was a long, heavy pause. Then, I made up my mind. I will pay off your debts this one time. But under 2 conditions: you seek treatment for your gambling addiction, and you sign a receipt acknowledging that I have paid this debt. Treatment, yes, I'll do it. Anything you say. And I'll sign whatever you need me to. Jacob rushed the words out, relief fleeting across his face. I arranged everything quickly. The debt was cleared, and Jacob started his therapy. He signed the receipt, his hand shaking slightly as he put pen to paper. A whole year had ticked by since I'd bailed Jacob out of his gambling debts and watched him walk into that rehab center. He'd come back seemingly changed, dedicated to our fresh start, or so I thought. That illusion shattered the day I came home to find not just Jacob, but his sister Linda and her 3 kids surrounded by suitcases and boxes in my living room. What's all this? I asked, my tone icy as I dropped my keys and bag on the hall table, taking in the chaotic scene. Linda, who had the nerve to look right at home, smirked as she straightened up from unpacking a box. "Oh, Eliza, we're moving in." Jacob said it's fine, since it's his apartment now. My head snapped towards Jacob, who was leaning against the wall with an all-too-familiar smug look on his face. "What is she talking about, Jacob?" Jacob pushed off from the wall and sauntered over with an impudent grin. "Exactly what she said. I've had enough, Eliza. You've been riding my back for years, making me your servant. It's time I took what's mine." I stared at him, dumbfounded. "Your servant? Are you out of your mind?" "I've supported you, paid your debts." Linda piped up again, her voice sharp. "And that just proves it. You've kept him under your thumb, paying to keep him tied to you." Jacob nodded vigorously as he pulled a stack of papers from behind a cushion on the sofa. "I've filed for divorce, and I'll be seeking compensation for years of mistreatment and alimony, since I've been the one stuck at home." The absurdity of his words stung. I looked around at the home I had built, at the faces of his nieces and nephews who looked confused and tired. This wasn't just a betrayal, it was a coup. I realized then that any response would be futile. Jacob had made up his mind, egged on by Linda's greedy ambitions. Instead of the explosive reaction they expected, I turned, my movements calm and deliberate, and went to our bedroom to pack a bag. Jacob called after me, his voice laced with false concern. "Where do you think you're going, Eliza?" I didn't look back as I zipped my suitcase. "I'm leaving. My lawyer will be in touch with you. Discuss any further matters with him." As I walked out of the bedroom, suitcase in hand, I could hear Linda's snide whisper. "Well, that was easier than I thought." Jacob laughed, a sound that once would have warmed my heart. Now it chilled me to the bone. "Yeah, she knows when she's beaten." I could hear their triumphant laughter as I descended in the elevator, but it was hollow. The night air was cool and liberating, and as I hailed a taxi, a small, knowing smile played on my lips. Jacob thought he had won, played his hand perfectly, but he was clueless about the ace I had up my sleeve. I directed the taxi to my house in the elite cottage settlement, an hour's drive away and a world apart from the city's chaos. This house was my sanctuary, unknown to Jacob. Years ago, when my business first flourished, I invested in this property, thinking of my long-term health needs. It nestled within a village that boasted of a specialized clinic for my condition. I had always planned to move here permanently someday, perhaps when I grew older, or if my health declined further, but with Jacob's betrayal, that day had come sooner than expected. As the taxi rolled through the secure gates, the familiar sight of lush gardens and manicured paths brought a sense of peace. The house stood majestic and inviting, a testament to the life I had built independently of any man. Unpacking didn't take long. I had brought only essentials, knowing everything else I needed was already here. Sinking into an armchair, I exhaled deeply, truly relaxed for the first time in months. The peace was short-lived, however. A few days later, my phone buzzed, a call from Jacob, his voice frantic and angry. "Eliza, you set me up. What's this nonsense about paying rent?" I couldn't help but smile at his outrage. "Calm down, Jacob. Why don't you come over and we can talk about it? I'll text you the address." The next morning, I watched from my front porch as a car pulled up. Jacob and Linda stepped out, their eyes wide as they took in the expanse of my property. The shock on their faces was almost comical. "What is this place? How do you have a house like this?" Jacob blurted out as they approached. I stood, crossing my arms. "Welcome to my home, Jacob. This is where I've planned to retire. You never asked, so I never mentioned it." Linda, ever the instigator, nudged Jacob. "She's been hiding all this from you, and she made you live in that tiny apartment?" Jacob's confusion turned to anger. "You tricked me, Eliza. And now your lawyer tells me I owe rent for an apartment that's been sold? I spent years taking care of that place." "That apartment was a rental controlled through my company, Jacob. You didn't think to ask about the details, did you? And yes, it's been sold. The rent's due next month," I explained nonchalantly. Linda piped up, her voice dripping with greed. "We want this house, Eliza. If we have to leave the apartment, you should give us this house." Jacob nodded, a desperate look on his face. "Yeah, if you don't, we'll sue. We'll take this to court." I burst out laughing, the sound echoing off the high ceilings. "Oh, you will you? This house was bought before I met you, Jacob. It's protected, outside the reach of your claims." Their faces fell, the realization that they had no legal ground to stand on sinking in. As they continued to protest, I made a simple gesture to the security personnel who had discreetly gathered nearby. Within moments, Jacob and Linda were escorted off the property, their shouts fading into the distance. The courtroom was cold and sterile, a stark contrast to the heated emotions running high within its walls. Jacob had filed a lawsuit claiming that I had exploited him, reducing him to little more than a slave in our home. The audacity of it made my blood boil, but I maintained my composure, trusting in the stack of evidence my lawyer had organized. Jacob took the stand, his voice shaky but determined. Every day was the same. I cleaned, I cooked, I did everything around that apartment while Eliza just took it all for granted. She treated me like I was less than nothing, he declared, throwing a resentful glance my way. Linda was next, her testimony dripping with exaggeration. My brother was completely under her thumb. She was cruel, always belittling him. I saw it myself. She's a tyrant. My lawyer, calm and precise, called our first witness, Helen, the real person who had been managing our household chores while Jacob purportedly played the downtrodden husband. "Can you tell the court your relationship to the defendant?" my lawyer asked. "I was hired by Mr. Jacob to clean their apartment and cook. He paid me from a separate account, which he funded," Helen explained, her voice clear and unwavering. "And how often did Mrs. Eliza interact with you in these matters?" "Never. She didn't even know I existed until the day she found me in their apartment," Helen replied, casting a sympathetic glance my way. The courtroom buzzed, the judge noting the reactions. Jacob's face had gone white, his sister's mouth agape. My lawyer then presented the prenuptial agreement, the document displayed for all to see. This agreement, signed by both parties, clearly states that in the event of a divorce, Mr. Jacob is entitled to nothing. No alimony, no compensation. Would you confirm, Mr. Jacob, that this is your signature? Jacob, now visibly sweating, nodded weakly. "Yes, but I didn't." "You didn't read it?" My lawyer cut in sharply. "Yet you signed it, correct?" "Yes," Jacob admitted, his voice barely a whisper. The judge made a note, his expression unreadable. As the final blow, I had instructed my lawyer to bring up the payment I made to clear Jacob's gambling debts. The signed receipt was shown, proving his financial irresponsibility and my attempts to save our financial stability. When the judge finally spoke, his voice was firm. After reviewing the evidence and testimonies, it is clear that Mr. Jacob's claims are unfounded. The court denies the claim for compensation and alimony. Furthermore, the prenuptial agreement stands as legally binding. The divorce is granted. Jacob slumped, defeated, while Linda's face contorted with rage. "You idiot," she hissed at him outside the courtroom. "You screwed up everything. We had a perfect setup, and you couldn't even play your part right." As they bickered, I walked away from the courthouse, a weight lifted off my shoulders. Jacob had been planning to live off me, thinking he could outsmart me. His greed was his undoing, and now he was left with nothing but his own failures to contemplate. Life had a funny way of coming full circle, and as I sat in my sunlit living room overlooking the gardens of my secure, serene village home, I couldn't help but reflect on the whirlwind that had been my life over the past few years. My business was thriving, managed efficiently by my assistant, and my health was stable, monitored closely by the excellent clinic just down the road. I was finally at peace, or so I thought, until Jacob showed up again, uninvited and unwelcome, disrupting my tranquility. It was a crisp morning when I saw him at the gates through the security camera, looking disheveled and desperate. I had instructed the guards never to let him in, but somehow he had talked his way up to the front door. As I opened it, he fell to his knees, an act so dramatic it would have been comical if it weren't so pathetic. "Eliza, please, you have to take me back," Jacob pleaded, his voice cracking. "I'll do anything. I'll cook, clean, whatever you want. Just let me stay here." I stared down at him, my disgust mounting by the second. "Get up, Jacob. You're making a scene," I said, my voice icy. "It's all Linda's fault. She talked me into everything, the divorce, the claims. I never wanted any of it. His words tumbled out in a rush, a sloppy attempt at excusing his actions. I crossed my arms, feeling the anger bubble inside me. You expect me to believe that? After everything, you think you can just blame Linda and I'll forgive you? Jacob's eyes were pleading, but behind them, I could still see the same selfishness. Eliza, I'm broke. I've had to take out a massive loan to pay you back that $70,000, and now I'm struggling. I can't survive out there. Should have thought of that before you tried to cheat me out of everything I've worked for, I snapped back. His hardships were of his own making. His current state was not my responsibility. Realizing his groveling was getting him nowhere, Jacob's tone shifted, edged with desperation. Eliza, I need this. Please. I shook my head, resolute. You need to leave, Jacob. Now. When he hesitated, I turned and signaled to the security standing by. They promptly stepped forward, each taking an arm, and lifted Jacob off the ground. No, Eliza, please, Enough, Jacob. You've made your bed. Now lie in it. I interrupted him firmly, my patience worn thin. As the guards escorted him away, I instructed them to ensure he would never be allowed on the premises again. Turning back to my home, I felt a surge of relief mixed with sadness. Sadness for the man I thought I had married, and relief that I was now truly free of him. I had dreams to chase and a life to live that was not defined by the deceit of a failed marriage. My home was my sanctuary, tailored to my needs and filled with peace. I planned to travel, see the world in ways I never had before, and meet people who shared my passions and integrity. As I looked out over the lush greenery that bordered my home, I felt a sense of excitement for the future. The world was wide and full of possibilities, and I was ready to explore it on my own terms, with my head held high and my heart open to new adventures. Jacob was a chapter closed, a lesson learned in trust and resilience. Now, it was time for new stories to begin.
My name is Kira, and it all began during my college days, a time I remember with a mix of fondness and regret. I was just another face in the crowd at our bustling campus, trying to balance my studies with a social life. That's when I first laid eyes on him, Jake. He was in several of my classes, always sitting a few rows ahead, his dark hair slightly tousled and his eyes focused intently on the professor. I found myself stealing glances at him whenever I could. There was something about his quiet confidence that drew me in. But as fate would have it, Jake was already taken. His girlfriend, Sophia, was a striking blonde with a bubbly personality that seemed to light up any room she entered. One day, Jake asked me for notes from lectures that he had missed due to illness. Over the next few weeks, Jake and I started talking more. We'd discuss assignments, share jokes about our professors, and occasionally grab coffee between classes. But every time I felt myself getting too comfortable, Sophia would appear, wrapping her arm around Jake's waist or planting a kiss on his cheek. "Jake, honey, there you are," Sophia's voice rang out one afternoon as Jake and I were leaving the library. "Oh, hi, Kira, right?" "Yeah, that's right," I nodded, forcing a smile. "Well, I should get going. See you around, Jake." I tried to convince myself that Jake and I were just friends, that my feelings were one-sided. But deep down, I knew I was falling for him harder each day. On our graduation day, I watched as Jake's family showered him with hugs and congratulations. Sophia was right there with them, beaming with pride. I stood off to the side with my own family, feeling a mix of excitement for the future and a lingering sadness for what could have been. "Congrats, Kira." Jake's voice startled me out of my thoughts. He pulled me into a quick hug, and I caught a whiff of his cologne. "Can you believe we made it?" "Thanks, Jake. Congratulations to you too," I said, stepping back. "Any big plans now that we're done?" His face lit up. "Actually, yeah. Sophia and I are thinking about moving to Italy. She's got a grandmother there, and we thought it'd be a great adventure." That summer, I threw myself into job hunting, determined to start my career on a high note. I sent out countless resumes, went on numerous interviews, and tried to push thoughts of Jake to the back of my mind. After all, he was probably off in Italy, starting his new life with Sophia. As summer faded into autumn, I found myself facing a new chapter in my life. After weeks of applications and interviews, I finally landed a job at a prestigious company in the city. I was thrilled about the opportunity, eager to prove myself in the corporate world. On my first day, I walked into the sleek office building, my heart pounding with excitement and nerves. As I was being shown around by HR, something caught my eye, a wall of photographs featuring the company's executives. My gaze landed on a familiar face, and I felt my stomach drop. There, smiling back at me from one of the frames, was a man standing next to Sophia, Jake's girlfriend. The nameplate beneath the photo read Robert Thompson, President. It couldn't be a coincidence. As I settled into my new role, I couldn't shake the feeling that fate was playing some kind of trick on me. I hadn't heard from Jake since graduation, and now here I was, working for his girlfriend's father. It felt like the universe was determined to keep Jake in my orbit, one way or another. A few weeks into my new job, I was grabbing coffee in the break room when I heard a familiar voice. "Kira? Is that really you?" I turned around, nearly spilling my coffee. There stood Jake, looking as handsome as ever in a sharp suit. "Jake, what are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He grinned, running a hand through his hair, a habit I remembered all too well from our college days. "I just started in the marketing department last week." "I had no idea you were working here too." We caught up briefly, and I learned that his plans had changed dramatically since graduation. "Sophia and I, well, we broke up," he said, his smile faltering slightly. "She decided to stay in Italy, and long distance just wasn't working for us." I felt a mix of emotions, sympathy for Jake's heartbreak, guilt for the small part of me that was relieved, and a renewed spark of hope that I tried desperately to extinguish. Over the next few weeks, Jake and I fell into a comfortable routine. We'd chat during coffee breaks, occasionally grab lunch together, and commiserate over work challenges. Despite working in different departments, we found ourselves spending more and more time together. One Friday evening, my colleagues and I went to a bar. As the night wore on and our colleagues started to leave, Jake and I stayed, talking and laughing like we used to back in college. "You know, Kira," Jake said, his voice soft. "I'm really glad you're here. Starting this job would have been a lot harder without a familiar face around." I felt a warmth spread through me that had nothing to do with the wine I'd been sipping. "I'm glad too, Jake. It's nice to have a friend here." As I went home that night, I couldn't help but feel like something had shifted between us. The Jake I knew from college was still there, but there was something new too, a vulnerability, a closeness that hadn't existed before. As the seasons changed, so did my life at work. I threw myself into my job, determined to prove my worth. My dedication didn't go unnoticed, and I soon found myself climbing the corporate ladder faster than I'd ever imagined. "Kira, can I see you in my office?" my manager called out one day. I walked in, trying to mask my nervousness. "Is everything all right, sir?" He smiled, gesturing for me to sit. "More than all right. I'm recommending you for a promotion. Your work has been exceptional." I left his office in a daze, barely able to contain my excitement. As I rushed to share the news, I bumped into Jake in the hallway. "Whoa, where's the fire?" he laughed, steadying me. "Jake, I just got promoted," I blurted out. His face lit up. "That's fantastic, Kira. We need to celebrate. Dinner this weekend?" I nodded, my heart racing at the invitation. "Sounds perfect." Our weekend dinners became a regular thing. We'd talk about work, reminisce about college, and share our hopes for the future. With each passing week, I felt myself falling harder for Jake. One night, as we walked home from dinner, Jake suddenly stopped and turned to me. "Kira, I think I'm falling for you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. My heart nearly stopped. "Jake, Before I could finish, he leaned in and kissed me. It was everything I had dreamed of and more. 2 years flew by in a whirlwind of love and career success. Then, on a crisp autumn evening, Jake got down on one knee and proposed. Then came the dinner with Jake's parents. His mother, a prim woman named Eleanor, eyed me critically over the rim of her wine glass. "So, Kira," she began, her tone deceptively light. "When do you plan on quitting your job? A proper wife should be at home, ready to start a family." I nearly choked on my food. I hadn't planned on quitting, actually. I love my job. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. "Well, I'm sure you'll change your mind once you're married. After all, we expect lots of grandchildren." Jake squeezed my hand under the table, but remained silent. I forced a smile, hoping this was just pre-wedding jitters talking. Our wedding day arrived, a perfect summer afternoon. As I walked down the aisle towards Jake, I pushed all worries aside. This was our day, our moment. "I do," we both said, sealing our vows with a kiss. The honeymoon was magical, but reality set in quickly once we returned. Eleanor's comments about children became more frequent and pointed. "Any news yet?" she'd ask every time we saw her, her eyes darting to my stomach. Months passed, and no pregnancy. I tried to brush off the growing pressure, but it was getting harder to ignore. One night, after another tense family dinner, Jake turned to me. "Maybe you should see a doctor, Kira. Just to check things out." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "Jake, it's only been a year. These things take time." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know, but, well, Mom's not wrong. We're not getting any younger." The following year was a roller coaster of emotions. Despite my initial reluctance, I agreed to see a doctor. The tests were uncomfortable and invasive, but I endured them, hoping they would provide answers and, more importantly, silence the growing chorus of concerns from Jake's family. "Well, Mrs. Stone," the doctor said, reviewing my results, "everything seems to be in perfect working order. There's no medical reason why you shouldn't be able to conceive." I felt a mix of relief and frustration. On one hand, I was healthy. On the other, we still had no explanation for why I wasn't pregnant yet. When I shared the news with Jake, his reaction surprised me. "Maybe you should get checked too. It takes two, you know," I suggested. He scoffed, shaking his head. "Come on, Kira. You know it's usually the woman's issue. Look, let's just keep trying, okay?" From that moment, our once passionate love life became a scheduled, mechanical process. Ovulation tracking, fertility diets, and timed intercourse replaced spontaneity and romance. With each passing month, the pressure mounted. Family gatherings became an exercise in endurance. Eleanor, Jake's mother, never missed an opportunity to bring up the subject of children. During one particularly tense Thanksgiving dinner, she cornered me in the kitchen. "You know, dear," she began, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "Sarah from our church group just became a grandmother. Her son is 2 years younger than Jake." I gripped the edge of the counter, forcing a smile. "That's nice for them." "Indeed," Eleanor continued, her eyes boring into me. "I do hope we'll have similar news soon. After all, a woman's primary duty is to bear children. It's what we're made for." I bit my tongue, not wanting to cause a scene. But inside, I was seething. How dare she dismiss my hard work and achievements? As the months wore on, I noticed a change in Jake. He became distant, critical. Nothing I did seemed to please him anymore. "Do you have to eat so loudly?" he snapped one evening as we sat down for dinner. I paused mid-chew, taken aback. What? And why is the house such a mess? Don't you have time to clean during the day?" I looked around our spotless living room, bewildered. "Jake, what are you talking about? The house is clean." These incidents became more frequent. Jake nitpicked everything, how I dressed, how I spoke, even how I breathed. Each criticism chipped away at my self-esteem. At work, I tried to maintain a facade of normalcy, but rumors spread quickly in our office. Whispers followed me down the hallways. Poor Kira, still no baby. I heard she can't have kids. Maybe that's why she's so focused on her career. I felt like I was suffocating, caught between the pressure at home and the gossip at work. The confident, ambitious woman I once was seemed to be fading away, replaced by someone I barely recognized. Just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, life threw another curveball my way. It was a regular Monday morning when I first spotted her in the office lobby, Sophia, Jake's ex-girlfriend from college, looking as stunning as ever. My heart sank as I watched her confidently stride towards the elevators. What was she doing here? As if in answer to my unspoken question, I overheard a colleague whispering excitedly. That's Robert Thompson's daughter. I heard she's back from Italy and joining the company. The news spread through the office like wildfire. Sophia was back, and she was working for her father's company, our company. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind was racing. How would Jake react? What did this mean for us? I didn't have to wait long for an answer. Later that day, I ran into Sophia near the break room. Her eyes narrowed as she recognized me. Well, if it isn't Kira, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. I heard you managed to snag Jake after all. I straightened my spine, determined not to let her see how much her presence rattled me. Sophia, welcome back. I hope you'll find working here pleasant. She let out a cold laugh. Oh, I'm sure I will. And Kira? She leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper. I always get what I want. Remember that. As she sauntered away, I felt a chill run down my spine. Her words felt like a threat, and I couldn't shake the feeling that trouble was brewing. Over the next few weeks, I noticed changes in Jake's behavior. He started staying late at work more often, citing important projects and client meetings. At first, I didn't think much of it, we were both ambitious, after all. But then the weekend business trip started, and a little later, gossip in the office. I tried to dismiss these comments as office gossip, but the seed of suspicion had been planted. It was during one of Jake's weekend trips that I made a decision I never thought I'd make. With shaking hands, I picked up my phone and dialed a number I'd found in the yellow pages. Hello, Hawkins Private Investigations? I need your help. The next week was agony. I went through the motions at work, plastered on a smile for Jake when he was home, all while waiting for news from the detective. When the call finally came, I almost couldn't bring myself to answer. We have the information you requested. You might want to sit down for this. As the detective spoke, I felt my world crumbling around me. Jake and Sophia were indeed having an affair. But that wasn't all, Sophia was pregnant. That evening, when Jake came home, I was waiting for him. The look of surprise on his face when he saw me sitting in the darkened living room quickly turned to wariness. Kira, what's going on? I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. I know, Jake. About you and Sophia. About the baby. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, to my shock, Jake started to laugh. It wasn't the warm, kind laugh I'd fallen in love with years ago. This was cold, almost cruel. Well, he said, his voice eerily calm. You want to know the truth, Kira? I've loved Sophia all along. You were just convenient. A placeholder until she came back. Each word was a dagger to my heart, but I refused to let him see me break. With trembling hands, I reached into my bag and pulled out a manila envelope. Here, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Divorce papers. I think it's time we both stopped pretending. As I walked out of the house that night, leaving a stunned Jake behind, I felt a strange mix of grief and relief. The life I had known was over, but perhaps, just perhaps, this was the first step towards something new. With the evidence collected by the private investigator, I decided to fight back. I sued Jake for divorce, citing his infidelity and demanding compensation not just from him, but also from Sophia. It was a bold move, one that sent shockwaves through our social and professional circles. During the proceedings, Sophia's outrage was palpable. "You're demanding money from a pregnant woman," she shrieked, her face contorted with anger. "How dare you?" I remained calm, letting our lawyer present the evidence. To my relief, the judge ruled in my favor. The court ordered both Jake and Sophia to pay substantial compensation for the emotional distress and damage to my reputation. The next day, I received an unexpected summons to the president's office. My heart raced as I made my way there, fearing the worst. After all, Robert Thompson was Sophia's father. As I entered his office, Mr. Thompson's face was grave. "Kira, please, have a seat," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. What followed was one of the most surprising conversations of my life. "I want to apologize," he began, shocking me into silence. "What my daughter and your ex-husband did to you, it's inexcusable. I'm deeply ashamed of Sophia's actions." I sat there, stunned, as he continued. "I know this doesn't make up for what you've been through, but I'd like to offer you a fresh start. I've spoken with a partner company, and they're willing to take you on with my highest recommendation. And," he paused, sliding an envelope across the desk, "I hope you'll accept this as additional compensation for your ordeal." With trembling hands, I opened the envelope to find a check for a sum that made my eyes widen. "Mr. Thompson, I don't know what to say." He smiled sadly. "You don't need to say anything, Kira. You're a talented young woman who deserves better than what you've been dealt. I hope this helps you move forward." My new job was a breath of fresh air. Without the constant criticism and pressure from Jake, I flourished. My confidence, which had been battered and bruised, began to resurface. It was during this time that I noticed the company's owner, David, paying special attention to me. At first, I was wary, my trust in men severely shaken by my experience with Jake. But David's approach was different, respectful, patient, and genuinely kind. One evening, as we walked hand in hand through a moonlit park, I decided to lay all my cards on the table. "David," I began, my voice trembling slightly, "there's something you should know. In my previous marriage, we couldn't have children. It might have been me, I don't know for sure, but—" David stopped, turning to face me. His eyes, filled with warmth and understanding, met mine. "Kira, listen to me. I love you. Children or no children, that doesn't change how I feel about you. You're an incredible woman, and I'm lucky to have you in my life." Tears welled up in my eyes as he pulled me into a tight embrace. For the first time in years, I felt truly accepted and loved for who I was. Just when I thought life couldn't get any better, it threw me another curveball, this time a joyous one. A year into our marriage, I discovered I was pregnant. The news came as a shock, given my history, but David and I were overjoyed. 9 months later, we welcomed our son, Ethan, into the world. As I held him in my arms for the first time, I marveled at the twists of fate that had brought me to this moment. Unlike my previous marriage, there was no pressure to give up my career. David supported my decision to return to work, and we found a balance that worked for our family. Life was good, filled with love, understanding, and the happy chaos of raising a child. 10 years flew by in a blink. Ethan was growing into a bright, curious boy, and our family life was everything I had ever hoped for. One day, while searching for some old documents in my email, I stumbled upon something unexpected, a letter from a clinic, addressed to Jake, my ex-husband. My heart raced as I read its contents. The letter detailed the results of a urological examination Jake had undergone years ago. It revealed he had prostate inflammation and cysts, rendering him infertile. The doctors had tried to reach him about urgent treatment, but failing that, had sent the results to the email I had provided at the clinic. I sat back, stunned. All those years of blame, of feeling inadequate, and it had been Jake who couldn't have children. A mix of emotions washed over me, vindication, anger, and a strange sense of pity for the man who had caused me so much pain. That evening, I shared the discovery with David. His response was exactly what I needed to hear. "Kira, honey," he said, taking my hand, "that's Jake's problem, not yours. You shouldn't let this upset you. Focus on our family, on the beautiful life we've built. It all happened 3 months later. The grand ballroom sparkled with chandeliers and the chatter of Seattle's elite. David, Ethan, and I had arrived at the charity dinner for the Foundation for Helping Children with Cancer, our hearts full of anticipation for a meaningful evening. "I'm going to show Ethan the silent auction items," David said, giving my hand a squeeze. "Will you be okay for a few minutes?" I nodded, smiling as I watched them weave through the crowd. Turning to grab a glass of champagne, I froze. There, just a few feet away, stood Jake and Sophia. Before I could slip away, Jake's eyes locked onto mine. A familiar smirk spread across his face as he sauntered over, Sophia in tow. Well, if it isn't Kira," Jake drawled, his eyes roving over me with disdain. "Looks like you've put on a few pounds. Eating away the stress of loneliness and infertility, are we?" I felt my cheeks burn, but I stood my ground, refusing to let him see how his words affected me. Jake continued, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "It's such a shame, really. Here I am with my beautiful wife and our gorgeous daughter, she's the spitting image of Sophia, you know. And you? Still alone, I assume?" Sophia turned to me, eyes narrowed. "How could you possibly understand the importance of helping sick children when you can't even have any of your own?" I opened my mouth to respond, but was cut off by a small voice behind me. "Mom, who are these people? Why are they yelling at you?" Ethan had returned, his young face a mix of confusion and concern. Jake's smug expression faltered, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "Mom," he stuttered, his eyes darting between Ethan and me. Before I could respond, David appeared at my side, his presence calm but commanding. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice stern as he placed a protective arm around my waist. Sophia, oblivious to the shifting dynamics, sneered. "And who might you be?" Jake, finally finding his voice, paled visibly. He's David Anderson, the president of Global Tech Corporation." The atmosphere changed instantly. Jake began to grovel, apologies tumbling from his lips. Sophia, enraged by his sudden change in behavior, berated him loudly. I couldn't take it anymore. "Jake," I interrupted, my voice steady, "I found the letter from the clinic. You were the one who couldn't have children." A hush fell over our group. Sophia's face drained of color, and she tugged at Jake's arm, desperate to leave. But Jake, his world crumbling around him, held her firmly. "So my daughter is not mine at all?" he growled. "Tell me the truth." Trapped, Sophia confessed through gritted teeth. She had become pregnant in Italy by another man, then used Jake to avoid her father's disappointment. Their argument escalated, drawing attention from other guests. Eventually, event security escorted them out, their shouts echoing through the hall. Months later, we heard through the grapevine that Jake had been diagnosed with cancer and was undergoing treatment. He had divorced Sophia and was suing her for compensation. But for me, it was just another reminder of how far I'd come. I no longer dwelled on the past, instead, I embraced each day with my family, grateful for the twists of fate that had led me to this beautiful life. I had been dodging the "when are you getting married?" question at every turn, especially from my friends who had all settled down ages ago. Laura's birthday bash was no exception. The moment I walked into her place, I knew I was in for a night of good-natured ribbing and maybe a few setups. Laura greeted me at the door with a sly smile. "Girl, you're the last free spirit among us. Not for long if I have my way," she teased, handing me a glass of wine. Inside, the room buzzed with our usual crowd, loud and lively. Laura had a knack for throwing great parties, and tonight was no different. I mingled, laughed, and dodged marriage questions like a pro. Then Laura pulled me aside, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Listen, I've got someone I want you to meet. Tom, he's a friend of Mike's. Trust me, okay?" She didn't wait for my answer, just dragged me across the room to where a guy was standing by the window, looking out. Tom turned as we approached. He was sharply dressed, which made him stand out even more. "Tom, this is my friend Chloe I was telling you about," Laura said with a wink. Hey, Chloe, Tom said, extending his hand. His grip was firm, confident. Heard a lot about you. All good things, I promise. Thanks, I said, trying to keep it cool even though I was already curious about him. Laura hasn't told me anything about you, so you've got the upper hand. Tom laughed. Fair enough. I work in finance, live downtown, and according to Mike, I make the best ribs east of the Mississippi. Ribs, huh? That's quite a claim, I teased back. We hit it off instantly. The conversation flowed easily, from work to hobbies to our shared love for bad horror movies. Tom was easy to talk to, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking for an escape route at one of these parties. As the night wore on, we found ourselves sitting on the balcony, a bit removed from the chaos inside. So, why is a catch like you still single? Tom asked after a lull in our conversation, a playful tone in his voice. I shrugged. Just haven't met someone who can handle my kind of crazy yet, I said, giving him a challenging look. We talked more about our jobs, and I explained the campaigns I'd worked on, which seemed to genuinely interest him. It was refreshing to talk to someone who wasn't just trying to nod along, but actually understood the nuances of creative work. As the party started winding down, Laura found us again. I'm not saying I told you so, but... She trailed off, giving us a knowing look. Tom and I exchanged numbers, and as I left, he called after me. Hey, don't be a stranger, okay? Let's catch a movie sometime. Maybe one of those terrible horror films? Sounds like a plan, I called back, grinning. Driving home, I couldn't help but feel like maybe, just maybe, Laura's matchmaking hadn't been such a bad thing after all. The year flew by faster than I thought possible, and before I knew it, it was my wedding day. I woke up feeling like I was in some kind of surreal bubble. Getting married wasn't something I'd put much thought into until I met Tom, and suddenly here I was, about to walk down the aisle. As my bridesmaids hustled around the room, fixing their makeup and adjusting their dresses, I stood in front of the mirror in my simple yet elegant wedding dress. Laura barged in, holding 2 cups of coffee, her hair half done. Drink up, you're gonna need it, she said, thrusting a cup into my hand. You look a bit pale, Chloe. Nervous? A bit, I admitted, taking a long sip. Feels like I'm stepping into someone else's life, you know? Laura chuckled. That's normal. Just wait till you see Tom at the altar. You'll know it's your life, all right. The ceremony was a blur. I walked down the aisle, my dad beside me, cracking jokes to help me keep it together. Remember, you can always run. I've got the car ready, he whispered as we approached the altar, earning him a sharp elbow jab from me. Tom looked stunned as I approached, his eyes never leaving mine. I couldn't help but smile, my nerves melting away under his gaze. We exchanged vows, his voice steady and sure, mine slightly trembling. Do you, Tom, take this lovably stubborn woman to be your lawfully wedded wife? The officiant asked, a twinkle in his eye. I do, Tom replied, loud and clear. And do you, Chloe? He turned to me. Take this hopelessly disorganized man to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do, I managed, eliciting a few chuckles from the crowd. The reception was loud and lively. Our friends and family mingled, danced, and toasted to our future. Tom and I made our rounds, thanking everyone for coming. When we finally had a moment to ourselves, Tom pulled me close, whispering in my ear. See? Not so bad, marrying me, right? Not yet, I teased. Ask me again after the honeymoon. We both laughed, and he kissed me, the kind of kiss that made me forget we had an audience. As the night drew on, Tom's mom, Marilyn, came over, her eyes a bit teary. I'm so happy for you too. Really, I am, she said, pulling me into a hug. It felt warm, genuine. Thank you, I said, surprised by the sudden emotion. I'm really glad to be part of your family. She smiled, then held my hands in hers. Take care of my boy, will you? He needs someone tough like you. As the night ended, we drove off to our honeymoon, the car decorated with cans, and a just married sign fluttering in the breeze. The future was uncertain, but I was ready to face it, as long as it was with Tom. After the whirlwind of the wedding, reality crashed back when Tom and I started talking about our living situation. He had set his sights on a swanky apartment in one of the city's most elite complexes. "Chloe, you should see this place," he gushed one evening as we browsed listings. "Top floor, killer view, and a balcony that's practically another room." I scrolled through the photos on the tablet, my eyebrows climbing higher with each swipe. "Tom, this place is gorgeous, but the rent's outrageous. Why don't we look at something a bit more reasonable?" He flicked away my concerns with a wave of his hand. "Come on, Chloe, we can afford it if we tighten up elsewhere. This is about setting a standard, living the life we deserve." Despite my reservations, we ended up in the luxury apartment with a rent that made me wince every time I wrote the check. We agreed I'd handle the rent, and Tom would take care of everything else. It seemed fair, if a bit skewed, but love made it easy to say yes. The first few weeks were like living in a magazine spread. I loved the space, but each rent payment was a reminder of our differing views on money. Tom's tastes leaned ever towards the extravagant. Adding to the tension, I noticed a change in his mom's behavior towards me. Where once she had been warm, now there was a coolness, a distance. She declined invitations to visit and didn't extend any of her own. It bothered me enough to bring it up to Tom one night as we cleaned up after dinner. "Tom, has your mom said anything about me lately?" I asked, watching his expression. He paused, a plate halfway to the dishwasher. "Nah, she's probably just being weird. Maternal jealousy or something." "Jealousy? Of what?" I pushed, not satisfied with the brush off. He shrugged, looking uncomfortable. "You know how it is. You're the new woman in my life. Give it time." But time didn't improve things. If anything, the distance grew, and soon, I felt it between Tom and me as well. His once casual elegance shifted into a constant showcase. He spent considerable time and money on his appearance, making remarks about how I dressed. "You know, Chloe, maybe you should see a stylist," he suggested one evening as we prepared for a night out with some of his work colleagues. I looked down at my outfit, simple and comfortable, then back up at him. "What's wrong with how I dress?" He sighed, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "It's just a bit rustic. You could spice it up. Impress a bit." I bristled. "I'm not here to impress anyone, Tom. I like my clothes. They're me. Urban, simple, and comfy." He shook his head, clearly frustrated. "It's about fitting in, Chloe. Looking the part." That night, as we mingled among Tom's stylish colleagues, the air between us was tense. I caught him several times looking at me, his gaze critical. It stung, and the night ended with us driving home in silence. The glossy image of our life that Tom curated for social media was miles apart from the reality that simmered between us. Every picture-perfect post was a stark contrast to the growing discontent I felt. As weeks turned into months, Tom's attitude shifted from mildly annoying to outright disrespectful. One evening, after returning from another high society party where Tom had criticized my dress in front of a group of strangers, I couldn't hold back any longer. We were barely through the door when I spun around to face him. "Tom, we need to talk. This can't go on," I said, my voice firm yet weary from the evening's facade. He raised an eyebrow, his expression a mix of amusement and challenge. "What's the problem now, Chloe? Your dress wasn't up to par again?" I clenched my fists, trying to keep my composure. "It's not just the dress. It's everything. You belittle me, in public and at home. You critique everything I do, from how I dress to the gifts I give you. Why?" Tom chuckled, a sound that grated on my nerves. "Chloe, you just don't get it, do you? We're not in your little quaint world anymore. We're playing in the big leagues now. You need to step up or step aside. Maybe you should just embrace being a housewife, like my mother did." The suggestion stung, the arrogance in his voice making my blood boil. "A housewife? Really, Tom? And who's going to pay for this lavish lifestyle?" You want me to stop working, but who will cover the rent for this palace you've chosen? He paused, momentarily caught off guard by my rebuttal. Well, I mean, we would figure it out. Figure it out? Just like you've figured out how to spend money on every luxury except the things that matter? You're more concerned with looking rich than actually being a partner in this marriage. I shot back. Tom's face hardened. You just don't understand the importance of appearances, Chloe. If you did, you'd spend more time at the spa, or maybe get some work done. Look around, everyone in our circle does it. I'm not everyone. And I'm not wasting money on spas or plastic surgery just to fit into your circle, I argued, my frustration reaching its peak. The conversation ended there, but the tension lingered like a thick fog. Over the next few weeks, Tom's obsession with maintaining a facade of wealth escalated. One Saturday, as we walked through the underground parking lot filled with high-end cars, Tom stopped to pose in front of a particularly flashy model. Here, take a picture, he commanded, handing me his phone. I took the phone, snapping the photo as he posed with a practiced smile. Going to caption this one about how hard work pays off? I asked dryly. Exactly, he replied, not catching the sarcasm. It's all about the image, Chloe. That's what gets you places. Tom was living for the approval of his followers, while I was just looking for sincerity in our marriage. The realization was sobering, and for the first time, I began to seriously question our future together. Lately, Tom's work hours stretched longer into the evenings, his presence at home becoming more the exception than the rule. I tried to shrug it off as dedication, ambition, something commendable. But the niggle of doubt was relentless, especially as Valentine's Day approached. A week before the holiday, while searching for an old photo album in our closet, my fingers brushed against a sleek, unfamiliar package tucked behind his hanging suits. Curiosity piqued, I pulled it out, a beautifully wrapped box from a high-end lingerie brand. My heart skipped. Perhaps Tom remembered how I always joked about spicing things up. When Valentine's Day dawned, I awoke with a flutter of excitement. But as we exchanged gifts over a hurried breakfast, the only thing Tom handed me was a fitness bracelet. Track your workouts better, he said with a casual peck on the cheek. No mention of the lingerie, no sign of indulgent silk or lace. By the time he left for work, the lingerie had disappeared from its hiding spot. My mind raced with possibilities, none pleasant. Was there someone else? Was that why he'd been so distant? By evening, my decision was made. I called a private detective, a number I got from a friend who had gone through something similar. I just need to know, I told him, my voice a mix of fear and resolve. 2 weeks later, I met the detective at a coffee shop downtown. His face was grim as he slid an envelope across the table. You were right to call, he said softly. I think this will answer your questions. Inside, I found evidence of dinners, late-night escapades, and receipts for gifts that certainly weren't for me. My heart sank, but I tucked the envelope away. Knowledge was power, and I needed a plan. That Friday, Tom staggered in late, reeking of booze. Guess what, Chloe, he slurred, barely able to stand straight. I got promoted. Big raise. We're celebrating tomorrow, my parents are coming over. He grinned, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. This was it. This was the moment to confront him. But not tonight. Tomorrow, with his parents as witnesses, would be perfect. I forced a smile. That's amazing, babe. We should definitely celebrate. As he stumbled off to bed, I sat in the living room, the weight of the envelope in my purse feeling like a ton. The evidence of his betrayal was palpable, the photos and receipts a mosaic of deceit. I rehearsed what I would say 1,000 times, each scenario different, each outcome uncertain. Morning light crept through the curtains too soon, and I rose, weary but resolved. Today would mark the end of one chapter and, hopefully, the beginning of something new, something real and honest. As I brewed coffee and set the table for the impending brunch, my hands were steady. The heartache had crystallized into a fierce resolve. Tom's parents did not take long to wait. His mother, Marilyn, had always given me the cold shoulder, but today her disdain was palpable. She eyed me over her teacup with a sneer as they arrived, bearing a gift for Tom. "Here, son," Marilyn said, handing over a beautifully wrapped package. "We thought you'd appreciate this." Tom unwrapped the gift, a sleek notebook embossed with his initials in gold. "Wow, this is classy. Thanks, Mom, Dad, you guys really know what I like," he beamed, clearly pleased. The atmosphere was strained as we sat down. Tom was oblivious to the undercurrents, chatting away about his new role at work. I could barely keep my composure, knowing what was coming. As the small talk ebbed, I saw my opening. I handed Tom a smaller, plainly wrapped package. "I got something for you too," I said, my voice steady. He weighed it in his hand, his smirk telling me he expected something substantial. "Hope it's not another one of your quirky gifts, Chloe," he laughed, tossing the package into the trash without opening it. "You do have terrible taste sometimes." Even Marilyn gasped, her usual frostiness towards me briefly turning to shock. "Thomas," she exclaimed. "That's no way to treat a gift from your wife." But I just smiled, the calm before the storm. "Why don't you take a look? I think you'll find it's quite fitting." Curiosity piqued, and perhaps hoping for an expensive gift, Tom retrieved the package from the bin and tore it open. The room fell silent as he unfolded the contents, photographs and receipts, the evidence of his infidelity laid bare. His father, George, peered over, his expression turning from confusion to anger. "Tom, what is this? Explain yourself." Tom's eyes darted around, seeking an ally, but finding none. It's not what it looks like," he began, but the receipts in his hand told a different story. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said quietly, the weight of months of deception lifting from my shoulders. "Tom has been cheating on me. These photos and receipts are proof of that." Marilyn, ever the matriarch, took charge, her voice icy. "We need to discuss this, now." Tom tried to defend himself, his words a jumble of excuses and blame. "Chloe never understood me. She didn't give me what I needed. It's not all my fault." Marilyn turned to me, her eyes softer than I had ever seen. "Chloe, I'm so sorry. I didn't know this was happening. You don't deserve this. We will support whatever decision you make." The words were surreal, coming from her. "Thank you," I managed. "I think it's clear what needs to happen. We need to get a divorce." The room was heavy with disappointment and betrayal as Tom's parents digested the news. George spoke up, his voice heavy. "Son, you've not only dishonored your wife, but disgraced us as well." "I need some time," I said, my voice firm despite the chaos. "I'll be in the bedroom packing some things." Each item I placed in the suitcase felt like I was closing a chapter of my life, one filled with deceit and misplaced trust. When I was almost done, I stood at the threshold of the bedroom, suitcase in hand, and addressed everyone still gathered in the living room. "From today, Tom will be responsible for the rent of these apartments, not me," I declared, my voice echoing with a mixture of relief and resolve. Tom's face turned ashen, his earlier bravado evaporating in the face of reality. Marilyn looked at him with widened eyes. "You haven't been paying the rent, Thomas?" Before he could respond, I cut in. "I paid every single month, along with groceries and most other bills." Marilyn's gaze shifted between Tom and me, a realization dawning on her. "All this time, you lied about Chloe? We thought she was just spending your money." Her voice broke with the weight of her words. "I work at the advertising agency, and I have a good salary," I said, looking directly at Marilyn, who seemed genuinely taken aback. "It's Tom who has been reckless with money." At that, Marilyn's composure shattered. She stepped forward, her eyes blazing as she faced her son. "You ungrateful, spoiled fool," she yelled, her voice trembling with anger and hurt. "Chloe is nothing but hardworking and kind, and you have failed her." George joined in, his tone harsh and unforgiving. "Foolish boy. We didn't raise you to be this way. I should have been stricter with you when you were younger." The room was charged with emotion, the air thick with the bitter scent of disillusionment. While Tom's parents continued to berate Tom, I zipped up my suitcase and moved towards the door. The finality of my actions was liberating, yet heavy with sorrow. As I reached the doorway, George called out to me. "Chloe, we're so sorry. We didn't know. We're going to make sure he learns from this. We might even need to reconsider his inheritance if this is how he conducts himself." I stepped out of the apartment, the door closing behind me with a soft click that seemed to resonate with finality. The cool corridor outside was a stark contrast to the heated atmosphere I'd left behind. Life after the divorce felt like stepping out from under a heavy shadow. I moved into a smaller, more modest apartment, the kind that felt cozy rather than cavernous. The walls didn't echo with past arguments or the hollow pretense of a life spun for social media. Here, I could breathe, decorate with simple tastes, and sleep soundly knowing I was living within my means. Since the split, I received monetary compensation from Tom and his mistress, a bitter reminder of their deceit that somehow felt like cold comfort. It was money I used judiciously, saving for a future that was all mine to shape. At work, I threw myself into new projects, earning a well-deserved promotion that came with a better office with a view of the city skyline that felt earned, not purchased. Despite everything, life settled into a rhythm that was quietly fulfilling. One quiet Saturday, as I was watering my plants, a new hobby that filled my home with greenery and life, my phone rang. It was Marilyn, Tom's mother. Our relationship had shifted surprisingly since the divorce, bound strangely by the shared betrayal of the man we both thought we knew. "Chloe, dear, how are you?" Her voice was warm, a stark contrast to the chill it used to carry. "Hi, Marilyn. I'm good, thanks. Just enjoying a quiet weekend. How about you?" There was a sigh, a rustle of papers. Marilyn was always more comfortable multitasking. "It's been hard, but Tom's learned a lot of hard lessons lately. His mistress left him after she realized the lifestyle he promised was just a facade." I wasn't surprised. People show their true colors in tough times. I hope he finds his way back to something real. "Yes, I hope so too," she agreed. "Chloe, would you want to meet for coffee sometime?" "I'd love to keep in touch." We started meeting occasionally, finding common ground over cups of steaming coffee. Marilyn shared tales of her gardening club, and I talked about my latest projects at work. It was strangely healing, building something new from the ruins of something so broken. As I moved forward, my goals became clearer. I was saving up, hoping to buy my own place outright. The dream of a mortgage, a place truly mine, was close enough to make my heart race with excitement and fear all at once. On one such coffee date, as autumn painted the city in hues of orange and gold, Marilyn and I sat in a quaint cafe, its windows fogged slightly by the crisp air. "You've done well for yourself, Chloe," Marilyn said, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "You're really an inspiration." "I'm just living my life, Marilyn. No need to impress anyone but myself now," I replied, taking a sip of my latte. "That's exactly why you're inspiring. After everything, you're still you. Just happier, stronger." I thought about her words. Stronger, yes. Happier, definitely. The freedom to be myself, to build a life not defined by someone else's standards, was liberating. As we chatted about mundane things, the future felt less daunting. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, fueled by my own accomplishments and the simple pleasures of a life lived authentically. The day I tossed my graduation cap into the air felt like the first page of a new chapter. Michael and I had our whole future laid out in front of us, or so I thought. We were just a couple of college sweethearts with big dreams, about to embark on what everyone hopes will be the happiest part of their life. "Babe, we did it. Can you believe it?" Michael wrapped his arms around me as we stood among our fellow graduates, buzzing with excitement. "I know, right? It's like the last 4 years just flew by," I replied, leaning into his embrace. It was comfortable, familiar. But little did I know, that comfort would soon be tested. We decided to throw a small graduation party at my place. It wasn't much, just a cramped apartment I shared with a roommate, but it was ours for the night. The room was filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and too loud music, just the way we liked it. "Julie, dear, so what's next for you two lovebirds?" Michael's mom, Jane, asked, her voice slicing through the din as she handed me a drink. Jane had always been the outspoken one in their family, never shying away from speaking her mind. "Oh, we're just looking forward to settling down, getting jobs, you know, the usual adult stuff," I said, trying to sound more confident about our future than I felt. Jane nodded, eyeing us like a chess player contemplating her next move. "Well, you're always welcome to stay with us until you find your feet." "Right, Richard?" Richard, Michael's dad, was a quieter sort, always tucked behind a newspaper or lost in thought. He looked up, a bit startled. Yes, of course," he muttered, giving me a warm but distant smile. "Thanks, but I think we'll manage on our own. We've actually been looking at some places." Michael chimed in, his hand finding mine and giving it a reassuring squeeze. The night went on, the future seemed bright, and for a moment, everything felt just right. A few weeks later, we found a small house for rent. It wasn't much, but it was a start, a place for us to build our lives together. The day we moved in was chaotic, boxes everywhere, neither of us knowing a thing about setting up a home. "Hey, where do you want this box?" Michael called out from the living room, struggling under the weight of what I assumed was our collection of college textbooks. "Just dump it anywhere for now. We can sort it out later," I yelled back from the kitchen, my hands deep in another box marked kitchen stuff. As we unpacked, we talked about everything, our jobs, which we were about to start, our dreams of eventually buying a house, maybe even starting a family down the line. It all seemed so possible, so close we could almost touch it. It's been a whirlwind couple of years. We'd even started talking about getting a mortgage and buying a place to truly call our own. That's when life decided to throw us a curveball. I was pregnant. The day I told Michael, he was over the moon. "Seriously? We're going to be parents?" he had exclaimed, his face splitting into one of those big, goofy grins that made me fall for him in the first place. "Yeah, seriously," I laughed, my heart swelling with a mix of excitement and nerves. "You ready to be a dad?" "More than ready. Let's do this," he replied, pulling me into a hug that felt like it could squeeze all the worry out of me. His parents, Jane and Richard, were just as thrilled when we broke the news. "A grandchild, finally." Jane had clapped her hands, beaming. "Oh, Michael, he will be just adorable. I just know it." Richard, ever the stoic one, had simply nodded and offered one of his rare smiles. "Congratulations, you too." Fast forward to the day our little bundle arrived. Lucas was his name, and he was every bit as perfect as we'd hoped he'd be. Jane was the first to declare, "He's a spitting image of you, Michael, at that age. Oh, I'm going to love him even more than I loved you, if that's possible." Her words were meant as a jest, I knew, but they echoed in my mind more often than I cared to admit. Soon enough, Jane's constant presence in our home began to weigh on me. It started out innocently enough, her coming over to help out, cook us meals, give me a chance to shower or catch a quick nap. But days turned into weeks, and her visits stretched longer and longer. By the time Lucas was 5 months old, I was gearing up to return to work, and the issue of who would watch him loomed large. Hiring a nanny felt daunting, not to mention expensive. So, when Jane offered to step in, it seemed like the perfect solution. But it wasn't long before a new worry crept in. Lucas was getting spoiled rotten. Every day I came home to new toys, new clothes, things we didn't need, things we didn't even have space for. One evening, after finding a brand new, overly expensive baby gadget set up in the living room, I couldn't hold back any longer. "Jane, we need to talk. All of this." I gestured around. "It's too much. He doesn't need all these things." Jane looked taken aback, her hands pausing in the act of folding some of Lucas's freshly laundered, designer baby clothes. "But I just want to give him everything. He's my grandson." "I know, and I appreciate that, really, I do. But he needs to learn to appreciate things, too." He can't have everything he wants, I tried to explain, my voice firm yet gentle. Before Jane could reply, Michael stepped in, his tone surprisingly sharp. Mom's right, Julie. What's the harm in pampering him a bit? He's just a baby. I turned to Michael, frustration simmering. It's not about now, Michael. It's about setting precedents. About him growing up thinking he can have anything he wants. The conversation ended there, but the issue didn't. I lay awake that night, wondering if I was being too harsh, or if I was just trying to be the kind of mom I thought I should be. After we moved into our new house, a dream fulfilled by a tight budget and a hefty mortgage, life took on a semblance of normalcy, or so I thought. Our little Lucas was now a bubbly, toddling 1-year-old, filling the house with his laughter and the pitter-patter of tiny feet. Just as we were adjusting to being homeowners and the financial strains it brought, life decided to throw another curveball my way. I was pregnant again. That evening, after dinner, Lucas playing at our feet, I broached the subject. Michael, I have something amazing to tell you. I'm pregnant again. My voice was shaky, teetering between nervousness and excitement. Michael's face, however, didn't mirror my enthusiasm. It fell, his brow furrowing deeply as he processed the news. What? Now? Julie, you know this isn't good timing. We're barely managing as it is with the mortgage and everything. This might not be the best idea. The words he didn't say hung heavily between us. Get rid of it. I felt sick to my stomach, not from the pregnancy, but from his implied suggestion. His parents were even less supportive. When we told them, hoping for some words of encouragement or even excitement, Jane was quick to express her disapproval. Julie, one child is enough to give everything to. Lucas needs all the resources we can provide. Another child might just stretch things too thin, Jane lectured, her tone final, as if she'd just passed down a law. I don't believe that's true, I countered, feeling a surge of protectiveness. Many families have more than one child. We can adjust and manage. It's not about resources, it's about love. Michael interjected, siding with his mother. Mom's right, Julie. Think about what's best for Lucas. Maybe it's not the right time for another baby. But my mind was made up. I'm having this baby, Michael, with or without your support, I declared, a resolve stealing within me that I hadn't known I possessed. The months that followed were tense and cold. Michael's disappointment turned into resentment that neither of us knew how to navigate. When our daughter Mia was born, he wasn't by my side. He didn't even come to the hospital. Returning home with Mia, cradling her in my arms while managing the door keys, was one of the loneliest moments of my life. At home, Jane's attitude was frostier than ever. She barely glanced at Mia, her granddaughter, choosing instead to focus all her attention on Lucas. Let me take Lucas for some time. You'll have your hands full with the baby, she offered, her voice devoid of warmth. After a moment's hesitation, I agreed. It would be easier to adjust at home with Mia without Lucas needing my immediate attention. But handing Lucas over to Jane felt like I was splitting my heart in two. The days turned into weeks, and Michael's visits home became fewer and farther between. He often stayed at his mother's, avoiding the responsibility of dealing with Mia or our strained relationship. When Mia turned 1, Lucas returned from staying with his grandparents. He had been away for what felt like forever, and I thought his coming back would bring some normalcy back to our fractured home. I couldn't have been more wrong. Lucas had changed. The little boy who left was not the boy who came back. He had become demanding, defiant, and, frankly, spoiled rotten. It was clear Jane and Michael had doted on him to the extreme, exacerbating the disparity between how my children were treated. Mia, in stark contrast, had grown quiet and self-contained, accustomed to receiving far less attention than her brother. One afternoon, the tension that had been building up spilled over. I was in the kitchen, preparing snacks for the kids, when I heard a scuffle from the living room followed by Mia's cry. Rushing in, I saw Lucas standing over Mia, a smug look on his face, while she sobbed on the floor. Lucas, why would you push your sister? That's not okay, I exclaimed, pulling Mia into my arms to comfort her. Lucas's face twisted into a scowl. She took my toy. It's mine. But you have to share, Lucas. Mia didn't mean any harm. I tried to explain, keeping my voice as calm as I could manage, despite the anger bubbling inside. Lucas didn't take it well. No, I don't want to. I'll tell Grandma you're being mean. Before I could respond, he had stormed out, likely heading to the phone to complain to Jane. True enough, it wasn't long before Michael stormed in, his face dark with anger. Julie, what's this I hear about you bullying Lucas? Mom says you're always on Mia's side. Michael confronted me, his tone accusatory. I'm not bullying our son, Michael. I'm trying to teach him to be kind to his sister. He pushed Mia. I shot back, frustration straining my voice as Mia clung to me, still sniffling. Lucas is just a child, Julie. You can't expect him to understand everything. You're always picking on him. Just let him be, Michael retorted, dismissing my concerns with a wave of his hand. The conversation ended with Michael walking away, leaving me to soothe Mia and simmer in my own unresolved anger and sadness. As Mia grew, her interests began to diverge sharply from the usual playtime activities. She showed an early fascination with building blocks and anything mechanical. I remember one evening, sitting down with her, watching as she intently stacked blocks with such focus and determination. Look, Mommy, I made a tower. Mia beamed, her eyes lighting up with pride. That's amazing, sweetheart. You're so clever. I praised her, my heart swelling with pride. Her intelligence and creativity deserved to be nurtured. I did what I could to support her interests, saving up to buy her a small robotics kit for her birthday since I knew better than to expect any gifts from Michael or his parents. Their blatant neglect of Mia's milestones continued to be a source of heartache for me. As my children grew, the imbalance in how they were treated by their father and his parents became more glaring. When Lucas graduated from high school, his grandparents proudly handed him keys to a new car, making it a grand spectacle. A year later, it was Mia's turn. As valedictorian, she stood on the stage, her speech moving some to tears. But when the ceremony ended, there was no grand gesture for her, not even a small token of recognition from her father. I, however, had managed to scrape together enough to buy her a new laptop for college, essential, not extravagant. Mia chose a technical college renowned for its robotics program. She was driven, and it paid off when she earned a scholarship after her first year. Mom, I got the scholarship. My project got top marks, she exclaimed over the phone one evening, her voice vibrating with excitement. That's my girl. I knew you could do it. I replied, my heart swelling with pride. Life went on, with Mia diving deep into her studies while Lucas drifted, relying on the cushion his grandparents provided. The real storm brewed the day Mia announced she wanted to bring her boyfriend, Ethan, home to meet us. I was thrilled. Michael's reaction, however, was anything but warm. Upon hearing the news, Michael scoffed. Why should I be around to meet some boy she's bringing home? It's not like I'm even sure she's mine. The insinuation was a dagger to my heart. If you're so unsure, why don't we just do a DNA test? Settle this once and for all. I shot back, the challenge clear in my tone. He waved off the suggestion. No need to waste money on that. Believe what you want, he said before grabbing his keys and leaving, not just the house but the situation, escaping from facing his responsibilities once again. That evening, as Mia and Ethan arrived, the air was bittersweet. Mia's excitement was tempered by her father's absence, but I put on my bravest face. I'm so glad to meet you, Ethan. Mia has told us so much about you, I said, welcoming him with a warm embrace. We spent the evening talking about their future plans, their dreams, and before long, Mia dropped another piece of news. Mom, Ethan, and I, we're planning to get married soon. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm so happy for you both, I managed to say, my emotions a mix of joy for Mia and sorrow for her father's absence. Later that night, after Ethan had left, Mia and I sat down, a mother-daughter moment that felt heavier than usual. I just don't understand why Dad can't just be happy for me, Mia confessed, her voice a whisper of sadness. Oh, baby, I know. I'm so sorry he isn't here for you as he should be. But no matter what, remember I'm always here for you. Always, I assured her, holding her close. The day of Mia's wedding arrived, a milestone I had both dreaded and longed for, given everything that had transpired over the years. As the guests filled the small chapel, whispers of excitement mingled with the rustle of silk and satin. But there was a palpable absence, the void where Michael, his parents, and Lucas should have been. Mia, dressed in a simple yet stunning gown, her eyes occasionally darting towards the entrance, masked her disappointment well. "Mom, have you heard from Dad?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper as we stood in the small bridal suite. "I've tried calling him, sweetheart, but his phone goes straight to voicemail," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady despite the anger brewing inside me. Just then, a notification pinged on my phone. It was a live broadcast notification from Michael's social media. Curious and anxious, I clicked it, and there he was, not in a suit ready for his daughter's wedding but in ski gear, laughing with Jane and Richard by his side, snow-capped mountains in the background. In a moment of sheer disbelief, I typed a comment on the live broadcast, my fingers shaking. "Why are you not at your daughter's wedding?" It took him only a moment to see the comment. "We decided this was a better use of our time," he responded callously, the camera panning to show a smiling Lucas. "Family time." I felt Mia peering over my shoulder, her eyes widening in hurt and disbelief as she watched the scene unfold. She turned away, her decision made in an instant. "I don't need him. I'll walk myself down the aisle. From today on, I consider my father dead to me." As the bridal march began, Mia squared her shoulders and walked down the aisle alone. At the altar, Mia turned to the gathered friends and family, her voice strong and clear. "Thank you for being here today. I apologize for my father's absence, he chose differently today." After the ceremony, at the reception, Mia invited the guests to watch a video she had prepared. "I made this for my father, to show him what he missed throughout my life," she announced, her voice cracking slightly with emotion. The video was a compilation of clips, birthdays with no presents from her father, holidays where her brother was the center of attention, numerous moments of being overlooked and ignored by her grandparents. The stark contrast of her childhood next to her brother's was painful and poignant. The room was silent except for the occasional sniffle. As the video ended, the support for Mia was overwhelming. Guests approached her, offering words of comfort and admiration for her strength. Later that evening, Mia took the stage, her eyes scanning the room, landing on me. "I want to thank my mom, the strongest woman I know, for everything. She gave me life, and then she gave me everything she could to make it a good one, despite everything else." As the guests stood clapping, I felt a mix of pride and a deep, searing pain for all that Mia had endured. But seeing her there, resilient, successful, and loved, I knew that despite the failures of others, we had triumphed. The next morning, as soon as the sun rose, I started packing. Michael and Lucas were still at the ski resort, their absence now a blessing in disguise. I moved quickly, sorting through years of accumulated life, deciding what to take and what to leave behind. By noon, I had rented a small apartment close to my work and had my essentials packed and ready. I called a lawyer recommended by a friend and set up a consultation. "Make sure everything is in order for the property division, and I'll need to discuss potential alimony," I instructed over the phone, my voice steadier than I felt. I left the divorce papers on the living room table, a silent message to Michael that I was done. When he returned, the shock must have hit him hard. The first call I received was filled with confusion and anger. "Julie? Why is there no dinner? Where are you?" His voice was demanding, expecting the routine that had governed our lives for so long. "I'm not coming back, Michael. I've filed for divorce. You'll find the papers on the table," I replied, my voice calm, devoid of the emotion that once would have made me tremble. "What? Are you a moron? You can't do this, Julie. You need to come back and discuss this," he blustered, his voice a mix of incredulity and fury. "There's nothing to discuss. I'm done, Michael. I hope you find what you're looking for," I said before hanging up, cutting off any further argument. The divorce proceedings were tough. Michael fought against the terms, but the law was on my side. I received half the value of our house and sufficient alimony to compensate for the salary disparity between us. It wasn't just a financial win, it was my freedom, hard-earned and overdue. Meanwhile, Mia's achievements added a brighter note to my transition. She had joined a prestigious scientific laboratory soon after her graduation, where her talent and hard work had quickly been recognized. She called me one evening, her voice bubbling over with excitement. "Mom, I got it. The award I applied for, $1 million for my work on bionic prostheses. We're going to revolutionize the way we help amputees," Mia explained, her enthusiasm infectious. "That's amazing, Mia. I'm so proud of you," I responded, my heart swelling with pride. With the award money, Mia and her husband bought a beautiful house, a place they could call their own and start anew, just as I was doing in my small apartment. The afternoon sun was setting, casting long shadows across the lush backyard of Mia's new house as we sat on her deck, sipping lemonade and discussing her latest projects. It was a peaceful scene, a stark contrast to the tumult of our past. I cherished these moments, seeing my daughter thrive in her own space, a testament to her resilience and hard work. My phone buzzed, slicing through the calm. The caller ID showed Michael's number, a name that now seemed to belong to a distant, unpleasant past. I hesitated, then answered, my curiosity piqued. "Julie, I need to talk to you." Michael's voice was strained, desperate. "What is it, Michael?" I asked, my tone guarded. "It's about Lucas. He's gotten himself into a mess, big debts. We've had to sell the house to cover some of it, but it's not enough. I was hoping." "You were hoping what, Michael?" I cut him off, not wanting to drag out his plea. "Well, Mia's got that big award, right? I was thinking maybe she could help her brother out," he stammered, the request hanging between us like a bad smell. I felt a rush of indignation. "You're asking Mia for money? After all this time, that's why you call?" Before I could continue, Mia, who had been listening, took the phone from my hand. "Dad, you're dead to me. Don't call us again. I won't help you or Lucas," she said, her voice icy cold. She hung up the phone and handed it back to me, her hand shaking slightly. I reached out and pulled her into a hug, whispering, "I'm right here, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you." Mia leaned into the embrace, her body tense with the effort of confronting her father. "Thanks, Mom. I can't believe he'd only call for that." The weeks that followed brought a cold silence from Michael's end. Word through the grapevine was that he, along with his parents and Lucas, had moved into a small rented apartment, their finances drained by Lucas's irresponsible behaviors. They were caught in a cycle of debt, their salaries and pensions barely covering the interest payments. As for Lucas, my heart ached for him, despite everything. Our estrangement wasn't what I had wanted, but his choices, influenced by his father and grandparents, had led us down this path. I sometimes wondered if things could have been different, if there was something I could have done to change the course of our relationship. One quiet evening, as Mia and I sat watching an old movie, she turned to me, her eyes thoughtful. "Mom, do you ever regret how things turned out with Lucas?" I paused, considering her question. "I regret that he's in trouble and that he's cut off from us. But we made our choices with the best intentions, Mia. Sometimes, that's all we can do." Our lives had diverged sharply from where I once thought we'd be. Michael and I were worlds apart, not just in distance, but in every way that mattered. Lucas, caught in his own spiral, seemed a universe away. But here with Mia, in her success and stability, in the warmth of the life she'd built, I found a bittersweet peace. I'm Deborah. Been married to Tom for over 5 years and working at a travel company since forever, it feels like. But my real dream? Running my own hotel. And not just any hotel, but a cozy spot for tourists at a ski resort that I had my eye on. One chilly Tuesday, as I was sipping my morning coffee and scrolling through ads, there it was, a sale listing for a property right where I wanted. "Tom," I called out, my heart racing with excitement. He wandered into the kitchen, his hair all messed up from sleep. "Check this out," I said, pushing my laptop across the table towards him. His eyes skimmed the screen, already frowning. "Deb, you know we can't afford this," he muttered, pushing the laptop back towards me without real enthusiasm. "That's where you're wrong," I shot back, already prepared for this conversation. "We can if we're smart about it. We have the savings, and I've already worked out the potential earnings in this business plan." I handed him the folder, filled with tables and forecasts. Tom leafed through it, his brow furrowing deeper with each page. "This looks solid, Deb, but it's a huge risk. And you know I'm not up for running a hotel." "I don't need you to run it. I just need you on board with the decision," I replied, hoping he'd see the potential. "You know, I could ask my mom for the money," Tom suggested hesitantly. The thought alone made my stomach turn. "No, absolutely not," I blurted out quicker than I intended. "We can handle this on our own." Tom looked surprised, but nodded. "Okay, it's all on you then. I'm out of the hotel business side of things." "Deal," I agreed quickly, relief washing over me. I knew I could handle it, I just needed him not to fight me on it. To celebrate, I pulled out a bottle of wine from the fridge and 2 glasses. "To our new adventure," I said, filling the glasses with a flourish. Tom raised his, a reluctant smile creeping onto his face. "To your new adventure," he corrected, and we clinked glasses. As we sipped the wine, I couldn't help but let my excitement bubble over. Imagine it, Tom. A cozy little hotel, guests coming back all flushed from skiing, sitting by a roaring fire. "With you bossing around a bunch of staff and fluffing pillows," Tom joked, but I could tell he was warming up to the idea as he saw how happy it made me. And just like that, it was settled. I was on my way to making my dream come true, no meddling mother-in-law, just me and a building waiting to be turned into the most charming little hotel by the slopes. I bought the room. It wasn't just any room, it was the beginning of my dream, a small family hotel right next to a ski resort. I had plans, big ones, to eventually buy the neighboring room and expand. But first things first, renovations. Every day after work, I'd hustle over to the site. The builders and the designer became my new evening companions. "Let's keep the rustic charm but modernize where it counts," I told Sarah, my interior designer, as we walked through the empty shell that would soon be bustling with guests. "Got it, boss. How about these tiles for the bathroom?" She held up a sample, her eyes bright with the vision. "Perfect," I nodded, scribbling notes on my clipboard. Between choosing paints and fixtures, I was neck-deep in paperwork, juggling permits and licenses like a circus act. Each night, I'd crawl back home well past midnight, my brain buzzing with plans and to-do lists. Then there was Tom. I'd get home to find dirty dishes piled high and takeout boxes littering the counter. "Tom, can you help out a bit here? It's like a bomb hit this place." He'd look up from his game, surprised. "But babe, you knew what this was gonna be like. I told you I'm hands-off with the hotel." "It's not just the hotel, it's this mess too. I'm not asking you to swing a hammer, just maybe pick up a sponge?" Tom would just shrug and turn back to his screen. "That's your gig, Deb. I didn't sign up for this." Every part of me wanted to scream, but instead, I gritted my teeth and kept pushing. At the hotel, I didn't just oversee, I got my hands dirty too. Hauling trash, cleaning windows, you name it. The workers probably thought I was nuts, but I wasn't above any task that would bring us closer to opening day. "Deb, you sure you don't want to leave that to us?" Joe, one of the builders, asked as I lugged a bucket of soapy water across the lobby. "No way, Joe. This is my baby. I want to make sure every corner is perfect," I said, wiping sweat from my brow. As the days rolled on, the place transformed. The 10 rooms took shape, each with its own cozy vibe, inviting and warm. The furniture arrived, and we filled each room with beds that you'd sink right into, plush sofas, and art that made you feel at home. When the staff came on board, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. I trained them myself, sharing my vision and hoping they'd love this place as much as I did. All booked up for opening weekend, boss. Jenny, our new receptionist, beamed at me one evening. I couldn't help but smile back, my heart swelling with pride. Thanks, Jenny. It's all coming together, isn't it? Absolutely, people are buzzing about this place already. Walking through the completed hotel, I felt a sense of accomplishment that was hard to describe. The tired evenings, the endless decisions, the physical and mental marathon, it was all worth it. This hotel was mine, built on my terms, my sweat. In a few weeks, my dream would be fully alive, and despite the hurdles, I felt ready. I had built something from nothing, and now it was time to see it thrive. The eve of the grand opening was supposed to be about final touches and celebratory toasts. Instead, it turned into a battleground. My phone rang, and I knew from the caller ID that peace was about to be disturbed. It was Susan, my mother-in-law. Deborah, darling, I need you to book 4 rooms for me and my friends this weekend, Susan's voice rang out, sharp and expectant. My stomach nodded. Susan, that's impossible. We're fully booked. I told everyone how quickly the rooms filled up. The line crackled with her fury. Listen here, I will not be sidelined. If you don't make room for me, I'll make sure your hotel can't open at all. I clenched my teeth. That's not how this is going to work. I can't kick out guests who booked weeks in advance. She hung up with a huff, leaving me staring at my phone in disbelief. The next morning, as if on cue, a municipal commission showed up unannounced. A troop of clipboard-toting inspectors began their march through the hotel. They checked every nook and cranny, the kitchenette, the doors, even the parking lot dimensions. My heart sank as they wrote note after note, their expressions unreadable. By the afternoon, the head of the commission handed me a list of violations. Fix these by the opening, or face hefty fines, he warned before they all filed out, leaving a thick air of tension behind. Barely an hour later, Susan called again, her voice dripping with venomous pleasure. Heard you had some visitors today. Funny how things work out when you don't play nice. My grip tightened on the phone. What are you saying, Susan? Oh, come on, Deborah. You're smart. Figure it out. I have my ways and my connections. Give me those rooms, or things get worse. I was seething. I relayed the conversation to Tom, hoping for some semblance of support. Deb, just give her the rooms. It'll be easier for everyone, he said, his voice irritatingly calm. Easier for you, maybe. Not for me, not for our guests. I'm not doing it, Tom. I'm not letting her win like this. He didn't argue further, but his silence spoke volumes. I spent the night poring over the commission's notes, determined to fix everything on my own terms. I called contractors, adjusted schedules, and rerouted some of our opening budget to cover the unexpected fixes. Every action was a defiance, a declaration that I wouldn't be pushed around. As the contractors buzzed around, fixing each item on the list, I couldn't help but feel a twisted respect towards Susan's ruthless tactics. She knew how to play dirty, but I was learning fast how to clean up and stand firm. The sun hadn't even fully risen yet, and there I was at the hotel, double-checking every little detail. In just a week, we'd be opening the doors to the public, and everything had to be perfect. I was adjusting a crooked picture in one of the hallways when the front door slammed open. The echo was ominous enough to set my nerves on edge. I turned around and there they were, Susan marching in like she owned the place, with Tom trailing behind her, looking like he wished he were anywhere else. Deborah, show me to the rooms. I want to choose the best one for my stay, Susan commanded, her voice cutting through the quiet morning air. I stood my ground, feeling a mix of anger and dread swirling inside. Susan, as I've told you before, we're fully booked. I can arrange something for another time, but not for the opening. Her face twisted into a scowl, and before I could react, her hand struck my cheek. The slap echoed off the walls, and a sharp sting radiated across my face. I stumbled back, hand to my cheek, shock overtaking me. Tom, my husband, the man who was supposed to have my back, just stood there, eyes averted. Tom! I cried out, my voice a mix of pain and disbelief. Susan was relentless. You ungrateful little thing. I've given you so much, and this is how you repay me? I helped you buy your apartment, your car, even this hotel. I demand the respect and recognition I deserve. My mind reeled. What? What money are you talking about, Tom? I turned to him, seeking some semblance of truth in his avoiding gaze. He swallowed hard, his voice barely a whisper. Deb, I didn't have the money when we bought the apartment. I took it from Mom. And I asked her for money for the hotel too. I thought it would help. The room spun around me as his words sank in. You used your mother's money without telling me? You lied to me? Susan smirked, a cruel satisfaction in her eyes. Yes, and now I'll make sure I get what's mine. I'll sue you for half of this hotel. It should rightfully be mine. With those harsh words, she turned on her heel and marched out, Tom following like a shadow, leaving me alone with my betrayal and a throbbing cheek. I leaned against the wall, trying to process the storm of emotions. How could Tom do this to me? How could he not only lie about the money, but let his mother attack me and not defend me? Once the initial shock had passed, anger took over. I wasn't going to let Susan destroy what I had worked so hard to build. I pulled out my phone and texted my lawyer, asking for an urgent consultation. Later that day, I received a text from Tom. Staying with Mom for now. Need some space. It wasn't unexpected, but it stung nonetheless. His absence made it clear, he was avoiding the fallout from his mother's actions and his own inaction. As I lay in bed that night, the realization that my marriage was over settled in with a deep, painful certainty. Tom had chosen his side, and it wasn't mine. The silence of the room echoed the emptiness I felt inside. But amidst the heartache, there was also a strange sense of relief. I was free from the pretense of a supportive partnership. Now, I could focus on my hotel, my dreams, without the burden of familial betrayal. The morning light was just beginning to fill the office of my lawyer, Mark. The heavy drapes parted slightly, casting long shadows across the floor. I was perched anxiously on the edge of the chair opposite his desk, recounting the latest threats from Susan and her claim on my hotel. Deborah, let's look at the facts, Mark said, flipping open the folder I had handed him. Inside were the financial documents and the prenuptial agreement Tom and I had signed before our marriage. Based on this prenup, any property registered solely in your name remains yours in the event of a divorce. I nodded, following his finger as it traced the lines of legal jargon that suddenly felt like a lifeline. And the hotel is in your name, correct? Mark confirmed, looking up. Yes, all the paperwork, the licenses, everything's under my name only. That's good. It's very unlikely Susan's contributions, if any can be legally proven, would give her a claim strong enough to override the prenup. He reassured me, his tone confident. A wave of relief washed over me, loosening the tight knot of anxiety in my chest. So, I can open the hotel without looking over my shoulder? Legally, yes. Just keep everything documented, and let's hope it doesn't come to a family showdown. Mark gave a supportive smile. The reassurance from Mark bolstered my spirits, just in time for the grand opening. The day was a whirlwind of activity. I was at the hotel early, helping Jenny prepare for the influx of guests. The lobby buzzed with excitement and nerves. It was the culmination of so much hard work and dreams. The first guests started arriving, and the day slipped into a pleasant rhythm of greetings and check-ins. That peace was shattered by a call from the front gate. Mrs. Thompson, you need to come out here, the security guard's voice crackled over the radio. What's the issue? I asked, already walking briskly towards the entrance. It's your mother-in-law. She's causing a scene at the main gate. My heart sank. Not today, I thought. As I approached, I could hear Susan's voice, loud and commanding. I am the owner of this complex. You will let my car through this instant, she demanded, gesturing wildly at the bewildered guard. Susan, this area is for official use only. Even I park in the general lot, I said firmly as I reached the heated scene. Don't be ridiculous, Deborah. I'm not lugging my bags from the parking lot. I'm staying here, and you will accommodate my needs, she snapped, her tone dripping with entitlement. With a huff, Susan yanked her bags from the trunk of her car and dropped them at my feet. You carry these to my room, she said, assuming I would relent. Instead, I stepped aside, allowing her a clear path to the reception on her own. The trolleys are by the main entrance. Feel free to use one, I suggested, gesturing towards the hotel's front doors. Susan glared at me, her face turning a shade redder. Without another word, she turned and stormed off towards the reception, leaving her bags behind. I followed at a distance, to ensure she didn't cause any further disturbances. However, as soon as Susan reached the reception desk, she erupted. I can't believe this. Deborah, you promised me rooms. Susan bellowed, slamming her hand down on the counter. Her friends, a posse of similarly stern-faced women, glared over her shoulder at Jenny, our receptionist, who looked like she wished the floor would swallow her up. Mrs. Thompson, I'm sorry, but we are fully booked. Deborah told you this multiple times, Jenny stammered, trying to maintain her professionalism despite the escalating scene. The commotion didn't go unnoticed. Guests in the lobby watched, some with raised eyebrows, others with phones poised, possibly capturing the meltdown. This is unacceptable. I'm your family. You owe me. Susan continued, her voice growing louder. It was clear she enjoyed the audience. I felt every eye in the lobby on me as I stepped forward. Susan, that's enough. You're disturbing our guests. Please, lower your voice or leave. Her eyes flashed with fury. Or what, Deborah? You'll throw out your own family? Yes, if I must. This is a business, and I will call the police if you continue to cause a scene, I warned, my voice firm, louder than I felt. The threat of police involvement seemed to take her by surprise. With a huff and a harsh, "You'll regret this," Susan stormed out, her entourage in tow. She paused at the door to throw a final glare my way. You haven't heard the last of this, she spat out, before exiting. Once they left, the lobby slowly returned to normal, and I apologized to our guests and staff, praising Jenny for handling the situation as well as she could. Despite the rocky start, the rest of the opening day went smoothly. Positive feedback from guests and a flurry of new bookings uplifted my spirits. The hotel, my dream, was finally alive with the buzz of satisfied customers and the promise of success. The following day, with the echo of Susan's threat still ringing in my ears, I called Mike, my father-in-law. I hadn't wanted to involve him, but things had gone too far. Mike, I need to talk to you about Susan. She's threatening me, and she made a scene at the hotel's opening yesterday, I explained once he picked up. Can you help me? She's out of control, and Tom isn't standing up to her. I'll do what I can. My ex-wife respects very few things, but my interference might just sway her. Hang in there, Mike promised, his tone reassuring. We ended the call, and I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe Mike could get through to her. A couple of days later, Mike called me to set up a meeting. He chose a neutral place, a quiet cafe downtown, to discuss everything. As I walked in, the sight of Tom looking anxious, Susan avoiding my eyes, and Mike's stern face set the stage for what I knew would be a decisive confrontation. Thank you for coming, Deborah, Mike started, his voice firm as he nodded at me. Let's get straight to the point. Susan, unusually subdued with Mike present, just clasped her hands tightly in her lap, her face pale. First, Mike turned to Susan. I want this nonsense to stop. If you continue harassing Deborah, I'll cut off your allowance. Susan's eyes widened. But No buts, Mike cut her off sharply. It seems you've forgotten that you don't have any money of your own. It's all coming from me. I watched as Tom shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his mother's financial dependency clearly news to him. And Tom, Mike continued, turning towards him with a disappointed look. I found out you've been lying about being employed. You're out of a job, and you've been letting your mother take loans to support your lifestyle. Tom's face turned a shade paler. Dad, I was going to tell you. Mike sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. I will clear those debts. But you're going to work for me, and every penny you earn will go towards paying me back. We'll start with a formal agreement. Tom nodded meekly, overwhelmed but knowing better than to argue with his father in this state. Turning to me, Mike's expression softened. Deborah, I'm sorry for all this trouble. How are you holding up? I took a deep breath, gathering my thoughts. I'm managing, Mike. Thank you. But I think it's best if Tom and I go our separate ways. I plan to file for divorce. Tom looked at me, finally showing a hint of emotion. Deborah, It's decided, Tom, I interrupted, not needing to hear excuses or apologies anymore. We'll sell the apartment and split the proceeds. You can use your half to settle your debts with your dad. He swallowed hard, nodding in resignation. Okay, I understand. And just to be clear, I added, pulling out a copy of our prenuptial agreement from my bag. You have no claim on the hotel. It was never part of our joint assets. Tom took the document, scanning it before sighing deeply. I got it. I won't fight you on this. Mike nodded in approval. I'll make sure he adheres to this agreement. After finalizing my divorce from Tom, I found myself at a new beginning. The sale of our shared apartment injected a significant amount of cash into my account, money that I was more than ready to reinvest in my future. My hotel was thriving, and the opportunity to expand presented itself in the form of a neighboring building up for sale. I didn't hesitate. I'm telling you, this is the perfect spot for those family suites we talked about, I explained to my contractor over the phone, my eyes scanning the blueprints spread across my desk in the hotel's back office. Sure thing, Deb. We can start renovations as soon as you give the word, he replied, his voice crackling with static. As for my personal life, it had settled into a calm I hadn't felt in years. The divorce, while painful, was a clean break. Tom now worked for his father's company, and according to Mike, he was paying back every penny of his debt through his salary. Mike was strict with him, no more idle time spent on games and frivolous spending. Deb, I just want to make sure he learns something from all of this, Mike confided during one of our regular calls. He was the only link I still maintained with that side of the family. I hope he does, Mike. For his own sake, I replied, genuinely meaning it. Mike had always been good to me, and it felt right to keep that bridge intact. As for Susan, well, the last I heard, she'd managed to pay off some of her debts, but trouble never did seem to stray far from her door. A friend who knew her told me she was already sinking into new loans, always playing catch-up with her lavish lifestyle. Can you believe she started begging Mike again? My friend gossiped over coffee one afternoon. I can believe a lot of things about Susan, I chuckled, shaking my head. I'm just glad it's no longer my circus. Life at the hotel was bustling. The new building project was well underway, and the excitement of expanding, of creating something that was entirely mine, filled me with a sense of purpose I hadn't realized I'd been missing. Each decision, from the type of curtains to the layout of the kids' play area, felt like a piece of a dream I was piecing together, day by day. One late evening, as I was locking up, Mike dropped by unexpectedly. He glanced around the busy lobby with a smile. You've really made something incredible here, Deb. It feels good, you know, building something lasting. Anyway, you're part of the reason I made it through. So, thank you. Mike waved off the thanks with a chuckle. All I did was stand back and watch you handle it all like a champ. Just make sure you keep a room available for me from time to time. You've got a lifetime pass, Mike, I assured him, and we both laughed, the sound echoing slightly in the quieting hall. As he left, I turned back to my hotel, the lights of the lobby casting a warm glow through the darkness. It was more than just a building, it was a testament to a journey of growth, of battles fought and won, and the promise of new adventures just around the corner. Hey there, I'm Julie. Let me lay this out straight, running a business ain't no cakewalk, but it's all I've known since Pop's passed. Dad was a self-made man, built a sports nutrition empire from the ground up. When he was gone, it fell to me and my big bro, Max, to keep the ship steady. He took the helm as CEO, and I jumped into the HR director's chair. It was early October, crisp leaves, you know the drill. Max and I were holed up in his office, one of those typical mornings, jam-packed with meetings and decisions. "Julie, we need to double-check these hiring protocols. We can't afford slip-ups," Max said, shuffling papers like they were hot potatoes. "Got it, Max. I'll tighten up the interviews. No more duds, promise," I shot back, scribbling notes. Our chatter was cut short by Linda, Max's assistant, poking her head in. "Max, your 10 o'clock is here." Max nodded. "Thanks, Linda. Let's wrap this up, Julie. Remember, quality over quantity." That evening, unwinding was on the agenda, so I hit up a local bar with some pals. Little did I know, life had a curveball lined up. That's where I bumped into Jake. Sports journalist, flashy blogger type, always with a camera in hand. He had that cheeky grin, said he recognized me from some industry bash. "You're Julie, right? The nutrition guru," he said, sidling up to the bar where I was perched. "Guilty as charged." "And you're Jake, the sports pundit who can't hold his liquor," I quipped, recalling his less than stellar performance at a recent event. Jake laughed, his ego intact. "Fair shot. But let me make it up to you. Can I buy you a drink?" I was about to brush him off, but curiosity got the better of me. "Sure, why not? But keep it classy, no beer goggle specials." As the night wore on, Jake's charm wasn't just the booze talking. He was smart, knew his stuff. But I wasn't one to dive headfirst without checking the water. A few months later, things got serious, and Max, always the protective type, called me for a chat in his office, which looked more like a fortress with all its plush trappings. "Julie, about Jake," Max started, "no hellos, no how are yas. You sure about this guy? He's slicker than a wet driveway." "I know, Max. But he's different. At least, he seems like it," I defended, knowing full well Max's meter for BS was off the charts. Max leaned in, his voice low. "Just watch yourself. And for heaven's sake, get a prenup. Don't let him near the finances." "Relax, big bro. It's under control. We'll sort the prenup." Jake wasn't thrilled about the prenup talk, thought it was a trust breaker. But too bad, it was non-negotiable. So, he signed. Grumbling, but signed all the same. Settling into married life with Jake felt like stepping onto a roller coaster that only went up, at first. Jake moved into my place, a sprawling house that Dad left me. It was more space than I ever needed, but soon enough, Jake made sure it felt like a celebrity hotspot. One lazy Saturday morning, I found Jake in the garden, setting up a tripod with his camera pointed at the house. He was framing the shot like he was directing a blockbuster. "What's the big setup for, Jake?" I asked, coffee in hand. "Content day, babe. Gotta keep the feed fresh," he said without looking up. "This backdrop is gold, makes for killer views." "You mean my house?" I frowned. "Just make sure you don't tell everyone it's yours." Jake chuckled, patting me on the shoulder as if I'd told a good joke. "Relax, Julie. It's all showbiz. You get it, right? Gotta sell the dream." As weeks rolled on, these content days became more elaborate. Rented luxury cars appeared in our driveway, and designer clothes draped over our furniture like we were running a boutique. One evening, I caught Jake sorting through a pile of flashy watches and gadgets. The living room was a mess, like a scene from one of those reality shows where people spend like there's no tomorrow. "Planning to open a pawn shop with all this, or what?" I teased, trying to keep the mood light. "All props, Julie. It's for the gram. You know, gotta keep up with the Joneses," Jake replied, his eyes glued to his phone screen as he scrolled through comments and likes. It wasn't just the props. Bills started piling up, too. Jake made sure we were seen at every hotspot in town, all while the credit card bills stacked like a house of cards. One night, I came home to find Jake in the midst of what looked like a mini film crew in our living room. He was all dressed up, giving a tour of our house as if it were a grand estate on some luxury real estate show. "Jake, can I talk to you for a second?" I pulled him aside, my patience wearing thin. "Sure, babe, what's up?" He flashed his camera-ready smile, not missing a beat. All this, I waved around at the lights, the people. "It's too much. You're turning our home into a circus." Jake's face hardened for a moment, then softened as he took my hands in his. "Julie, babe, trust me, this is good for us. These videos? They're blowing up. It's all about branding, babe. We're getting tons of traction here. Just enjoy the ride." One evening over a casual dinner at home, which had become a rarity given our hectic schedules, Jake brought up an idea that initially sounded promising. "Hey, Julie, I've been thinking," Jake started, his tone casual as he passed me the salad bowl. "Why not use my blog to give the family business a little boost? I could do a feature on the sports nutrition products. It'd be a fun project." I was intrigued, if a bit cautious. Mixing personal and professional wasn't always a recipe for success. "Really? That sounds great, but how much is this going to cost us?" I asked, trying to tread lightly. Jake smiled, waving his hand dismissively as he took another bite. "Oh, come on, it's family. I wouldn't charge you guys. We'll do it for free. Just think of the exposure it could bring." The next day, full of optimism, I brought Jake to Max's office to discuss the proposal. I figured it would be a straightforward meeting. After all, Jake was offering to do the promo for free. Walking into Max's office, I felt a buoyant sense of pride in Jake's generous offer. "Max, Jake has a great idea to boost our product line through his blog," I began, smiling at Jake. Jake nodded and took over with confidence. "Thanks, Julie. So, Max, I've got a decent follower base, and I was thinking of shooting some high-quality videos about your products. Put them up on my blog, maybe even do a series. It could really drive some traffic and increase sales. Best part? I'm happy to do it as a family favor." Max seemed pleasantly surprised, leaning back in his chair with a cautious smile. "Really? That's a generous offer, Jake. It sounds like a good opportunity for some extra visibility. What's the catch?" Jake hesitated just a moment too long before delivering the bombshell. "Well, when I said free, I meant no out-of-pocket costs up front. But to cover production quality, editing, marketing, I'd need about 25 grand. The room's temperature seemed to drop several degrees. Max's face hardened, and I felt my own smile falter into confusion. $25,000? Jake, last night you said this would be free, I interjected, my voice a mix of surprise and disappointment. Jake's confident demeanor didn't waver. Yeah, free as in I'm not making a profit off this. That's just to cover the expenses. It's standard for this kind of work. Max's expression was unreadable for a moment before he spoke. Jake, we're talking about promoting my sister's, your wife's, company. This isn't just any client. Charging us 25 grand doesn't sound like a family favor. Jake stood a bit straighter, his response defensive. It's business, Max. That's how things work in media. You want professional quality, you have to pay for it. The meeting ended abruptly, with Max politely but firmly declining Jake's proposal. As we left his office, the air between Jake and me was thick with unsaid things. I felt a chasm opening up, one that was filled with doubts about Jake's intentions and his understanding of what family meant to me. Life at home was growing colder by the day, and work was my only refuge. To keep the company on track and take some of the load off my shoulders, I decided it was time to bring on a new finance director. That's when Lauren entered the picture, bright, driven, and sharp as a tack. She was just the kind of talent our company needed. Lauren quickly became more than just an employee, she was a trusted advisor. She often joined my brother Max and me for our brainstorming sessions at my house. These meetings were crucial for the future of our business, filled with lively discussions and bold ideas. Lauren's insights were invaluable, bringing fresh perspectives that even Max, with all his experience, appreciated. Jake, however, didn't share our enthusiasm. Whenever he was around, he seemed disinterested, lounging with a glass of wine, more spectator than participant. His boredom was palpable, his contributions minimal. As the months rolled by, Jake's absences became more frequent. His business trips seemed to take him away for days, sometimes weeks at a time. I tried to keep up with his blog, watching his posts for any sign of what was really going on. But everything there was just as polished and perfect as ever, smiling faces, exotic locations, and no hint of anything amiss. Part of me was relieved, thinking maybe this was just the life of a sports journalist. Then, one Sunday afternoon, Max dropped by for coffee. We sat in the kitchen, a rare moment of calm between us. That's when he brought it up, casually stirring his coffee. "Julie, I've noticed you and Jake haven't been around much together. Everything okay?" I bristled at his words, the spoon in my hand clinking louder against the mug than I intended. "What's that supposed to mean, Max? Just because we don't have dinners together every night? Jake's busy, I'm busy. We're both just doing our thing." Max studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "Okay, Julie. Just remember, I'm here if you need to talk. About anything, okay?" His words, meant to comfort, only made the pit in my stomach grow. I nodded, forcing a smile. "Thanks, Max. I know. I'm fine, really." But as the days turned into weeks, and Jake's brief appearances at home became even rarer, I couldn't shake the unease that had settled over me. Was I just being paranoid? Or was there more to Jake's trips than meets the eye? One night, lying in bed alone, I couldn't sleep. My phone was in my hand before I knew it, scrolling through old messages and pictures of Jake and me. We looked happy, carefree. I missed that. I missed him. The night was supposed to be a celebration of our company's success. We had just hit a major profit milestone, and Max had gone all out for the party. The venue was decked with elegant decor, the buffet was lavish, and the air buzzed with the chatter of our proud team. As the evening wore on, the weight of my earlier decision to confront Jake loomed over me. He had been mingling, camera in hand, seemingly more interested in capturing the perfect shot than celebrating our achievement. Feeling a bit overwhelmed, I stepped out into the quieter foyer to catch my breath. That's when I saw him. Jake, not alone, tucked away behind a half-drawn curtain. My heart skipped as I thought to steal a moment with him, to maybe smooth over the growing rift between us. I moved closer, my steps silent on the plush carpet. But the closer I got, the clearer the conversation became. It wasn't just innocent laughter, it was intimate, secretive. My pace slowed, and I stopped just short of revealing myself, hidden by the shadow of the partition. Jake was there with Lauren, our finance director. His hands were on her, pulling her close in a way that made my stomach churn. Her laughter tinkled through the air, a sound I had come to appreciate for entirely different reasons. "And once Julie's money hits our account, we're set," Jake whispered, his words like daggers. "We can finally get out of here, buy that house in Mexico, just like we wanted." Lauren giggled, her voice dripping with contempt. "Can you believe how easy it was? She's such a stupid chicken, clueless and loaded." Their laughter cut through me, sharp and mocking. My breath caught in my throat, heart pounding with a cocktail of hurt and fury. How long had this been going on? How could I have been so blind? I backed away quietly, ensuring they didn't notice me. My mind raced as I returned to the party, finding Max in the crowd. His face was lit up with pride and joy, sharing a joke with some of our top managers. I pulled him aside, my voice a hushed, urgent whisper. "Max, I need to talk to you. It's urgent. Let's find somewhere private." Once secluded, I spilled everything. Every word, every laugh I had overheard. Max's face hardened with each detail, his initial shock turning to icy fury. "We'll handle this, Julie," he said, his voice low and steady. "We'll get auditors to go through the accounts first thing tomorrow. I'll also find a detective. We need solid evidence." His decisiveness was a bomb, and his next words were a vow. They won't get away with this. Not against my sister, not against our company. We returned to the party, our faces masks of composure. Inside, I was reeling, but outwardly, I was calm, even as Jake and Lauren rejoined the group, laughing, oblivious to the storm coming their way. The morning after the party, I was up early, driven by a mix of adrenaline and resolve. I met Max at the office, before anyone else had arrived. He had already lined up meetings with some of the best auditors in the city and was on the phone trying to secure a reputable private detective. "Julie, I've got someone coming in at 9. He's supposed to be one of the best," Max said as soon as I walked into his office. His face was stern, the lines around his eyes deeper than usual. The auditors arrived, a team of 3, each with a laptop and a briefcase full of what I assumed were tools of their trade. They set up in one of our conference rooms, and Max and I briefed them on the situation without going into too many personal details. "We've noticed some discrepancies in our accounts, small transactions that don't add up," Max explained, his voice firm. "We need a thorough check of all transactions for the past 6 months." The lead auditor, a sharp-eyed woman named Janet, nodded. "We'll start with the bank statements, cross-reference them with your ledgers, and track every transaction. It might take a few days, but we'll find out where your money's been going." Later that afternoon, the private detective Max had hired came in. He was a middle-aged man named Carl, with a demeanor that was all business. "Mr. Marshall told me you're dealing with potential internal fraud," Carl said, settling into the chair in Max's office. "Yes, and possibly more than that," I said, meeting his gaze. "We think it's linked to a personal matter as well." Carl nodded, jotting down notes. "I'll need access to certain information, bank records, employee details, communications if possible. Anything that can help paint a clearer picture of what's been going on." As the days passed, the atmosphere in the office was tense. I continued to work, interact with staff, and even speak with Jake and Lauren, though every conversation felt like walking on glass shards. Finally, the auditors called us into the conference room to present their findings. The news was as bad as we feared. Janet laid it out for us. We found numerous irregular transactions, totaling just over $2 million. All directed to an account that, after some digging, appears to be in Mr. Jake Thompson's name. I sat there, numb, the finality of it all settling in my stomach like lead. But there was more. Carl had his report ready too. I'd been following Mr. Thompson and Ms. Lauren Aronson. They'd been careful, but not careful enough. I've got photos of them together, receipts for a car he bought her, and jewelry. Lots of it. He laid the photos on the table, each one a knife in my heart. They've also bought tickets to Mexico. Looks like they plan to leave in 4 months. And there's this, Carl continued, handing over a document. Mr. Thompson has secured a job with a media company in Mexico, under a work visa processed 2 months ago. I listened, each word Carl said fueling the cold fire inside me. "Anything else?" I asked, my voice steady. "They're waiting on a final transfer of funds into their account. Looks like they're planning one big score before they leave," Carl concluded. As we wrapped up, I knew what had to be done. The pain of betrayal was deep, but it sharpened my resolve. Jake and Lauren would pay for their treachery, and I would make sure of it. As the end of the year neared, I planned a pre-Christmas celebration like no other. The famous restaurant, decked in holiday style, filled quickly with the buzz of excited employees. I knew Jake would see this as another opportunity to showcase his glamorous life, oblivious to the storm brewing. Jake entered the venue in a sharp suit, his smile wide as he narrated into his camera. "Here we are at one of the city's most exclusive spots, celebrating a fantastic year," he broadcasted live to his followers. Cameras I had installed earlier rolled quietly, capturing every moment for the climax I had meticulously planned. Midway through the evening, with applause still echoing for the employee awards, I took the stage. "Now, for a very special recognition," I announced, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I called Lauren up. "For outstanding performance and dedication, This year's top honor goes to our finance director, Lauren Aronson. The applause was warm as she joined me on stage, a puzzled smile on her face as I handed her a beautifully wrapped box. "Open this later," I whispered, and she nodded, stepping down with her prize. Finally, it was time for the grand finale. I called Jake up to the stage, my heart pounding against my ribs. "And now, a special thanks to someone who has shared much of my life's journey," I began, my voice echoing across the room. The room quieted, all eyes on us. Jake beamed, soaking in the adoration, completely unaware. I handed him a similar box. "Please, open this now." Confusion flickered across his face as he lifted the lid, his hands trembling slightly. The color drained from his face as he stared down at the divorce papers and the stack of photographs, images of him with Lauren, unmistakable in their intimacy. The silence was deafening. Jake's eyes met mine, and I could see the realization crashing down on him. His live feed was still running, broadcasting his disgrace for all to see. "Now," I continued, turning to Lauren, who stood frozen near her seat, "would you please open your gift?" With shaking hands, Lauren unwrapped her box to reveal receipts for the luxury car Jake had bought her, and the damning account statements of the stolen money. Murmurs filled the room as the evidence displayed on a large screen behind me. I loved a man I thought I knew, I addressed the crowd, my voice breaking the stunned silence. But he, along with our finance director, plotted to steal not just money from our company, but also our trust and future. Jake's voice cracked as he grabbed the microphone. "It was all her idea. She seduced me into this mess," he blurted, pointing a trembling finger at Lauren. Lauren's face contorted with rage as she stormed the stage. "You liar! You promised me a life together." She slapped him, the sound echoing, as the crowd gasped. Max stepped forward, placing a firm hand on my shoulder. "The police are on their way. Both of you will answer for what you've done," he declared, his voice booming over the mic. The room erupted into chaos as the police arrived, handcuffing Jake and Lauren amidst their protests. I watched, a complex knot of relief and sorrow in my chest, as they were led away. Jake's live feed of the pre-Christmas event had gone viral, catapulting the whole sordid affair into the public eye. My phone was buzzing nonstop, notifications piling up from viewers who had watched everything unfold. "Start your own blog" became a recurring suggestion. I chuckled at that, me, a blogger? As the dust settled, the legal ramifications kicked in full force. I filed for divorce immediately, and with the evidence stacked high against Jake, it was a straightforward process. The court granted me a significant financial settlement due to his fraud and betrayal. Lauren, caught in her own web of lies, faced the courts too. She pleaded guilty to embezzlement, returned every stolen dollar, and watched her professional credentials dissolve before her eyes. Banned from holding any significant corporate position, her career was effectively over. Jake's life unraveled spectacularly. The Mexican media company, having caught wind of his misdeeds, terminated his contract, citing moral clause violations. Other agencies and networks shied away, not wanting to associate with someone so publicly disgraced. His subscriber count plummeted as fans abandoned ship, and eventually, he shut down his blog, his primary source of income gone. One evening, several weeks after the trial, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find Jake, a shadow of his former self. He looked worn, his eyes pleading. "Julie, I'm so sorry. I was wrong, so terribly wrong. Can we talk?" His voice was hoarse, desperate. I stood there, the cool evening breeze brushing against my face, considering the man I had once loved. "Talk? After everything you've done? There's nothing left to say, Jake." My voice was calm but firm. "But I've lost everything. I need help. Please, Julie," he implored, taking a step forward. I shook my head, my resolve steel. "You made your choices, Jake. Now you live with them. Goodbye." I closed the door softly but firmly, cutting off any further pleas. Turning away from the door, I felt a surge of strength. It was over. I was free from his deceit. With renewed vigor and trust, Max and I steered our company into new ventures and expansions. The support from the community was overwhelming, and in time, I did start that blog. As for Jake, I heard he moved away, a ghost of his former self, searching for a fresh start. I didn't wish him ill, but he was part of a chapter that was firmly closed, locked away in the archives of lessons learned.